2020 Township Trustee Meeting. If we could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you very much. Kelly, please let the roll show that we are all present. And I'd like to move to the approval of the consent agenda. Everyone had a chance to take a look at that.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Chris, was that you?
I was pretending I was throwing my voice.
Sorry about that.
Okay, moving on to the approval of the agenda. What is it? Looks, I have nothing to add. Anyone have anything to add?
I make a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
I'll support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Moving on, announcements and communications. I know John has a pretty cool announcement, not cool announcement, but an announcement.
This is on February 13th of this year, Gwendolyn Sue Knapp died at age 78. For those that are not familiar with Sue, she was a Lyon Township trustee from 1975 to 77. She then was elected as supervisor of Lyon Township until 1981. Sue then served again as trustee until 1998. I'm sorry, 1988. As a trustee, she was liaison to the Zoning Board of Appeals and a police board they had prior to the township contracting with the Oakland County Sheriff. Many years ago, Sue and her husband Jerry owned a gas station next to the new Hudson Inn. She is survived by her husband Jerry. That concludes my report.
And one note about Susan Knapp is she was the first and only woman supervisor of Lyon Township. So I think that's something to be pretty cool. All right, moving on. I do have an announcement. I have an announcement that I just learned this afternoon that's very cool, is we've been waiting to hear from the Oakland County Road Commission about the Kent Lake, Silver Lake traffic light. So they got back to me today and they said that the traffic intersection does warrant a light. Okay. However, the intersection needs some improvements, some roadway geometric improvements before the traffic light can be installed. So they were talking about maybe a center turn lane, things like that. They're willing to go forward, put it on their list, and go forward and put this in their queue to get this done. And they also said that they would do all the study for free. I mean, it would be part of the project. The $150K that we put towards the light, they would put towards any improvement to the intersection, and they'd pay the rest. But it's a couple months away. This is going to take a little bit of time, but it will get done. So we've been waiting to hear that. It may be, but we're in for 150. Okay. Anyone else have anything you'd like to?
Yep, in case you haven't heard, we have a presidential primary that's coming up on March 10th. And if you still need an absentee ballot, please come into the office and grab one. Otherwise, please, we'll see you at the polls on the 10th at 7 a.m. we open, close at 8 p.m.
Perfect. Anyone else? Fine. Moving on, call to the public. This is a time where you can stand up and talk about non-agenda related items, and please feel free. Please try to take 2 minutes. Your name and address for the record, please.
Frank Socorifos, 24233 Terra Drive, South Lyon, Michigan. I am here to complain about Dandy Acres, the dog lodge that is located behind my house. They are not allowed to run according to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Their special land use stipulates that they're not allowed to have a boarding kennel. They do not follow any setback requirements, and we have a public nuisance ongoing for the last 4 to 5 years from this location. And we are asking the township to enforce your zoning ordinances and special land uses, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to come on up and come on up?
Bronko Mitkowski, 29817 Pine Tree Drive. Mine was actually, I know Chris was involved with it. I just wanted to say, give a thank you to the board, because I live off of Pontiac Trail in Martindale, and it had flooded for years. Ever since we moved in, it's been flooding, and I know he had worked with the road commission to try and correct that issue, and they finally opened the culvert that goes to the south side. And ever since then, it is just a trickle on the side of the road. There is no water on the road anymore, and it's, to me, a little sad that the road commission has to be called that many times, but I appreciate the board's help with that.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else like to come on? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to reports. Tina's not here. We'll move her on. Fire. Chief, anything for the fire?
Caught me off guard there. Nothing big to report. I just wanted to give you an update that the regional grant I mentioned last month regarding the air packs and bottles it's a pretty big project, and we're going forward with it with Commerce, South Lyon, Milford, and Wixom. I believe there's the 5 communities. So we're submitting that as a FEMA grant, and then we're also working on our own individual Lyon Township grant, which we have to identify in the next few days. But we are looking right now at the ballistic vests for active shooters and working with law enforcement. So I'll keep you posted on that. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Chief. Moving on to the sheriff. Lieutenant, anything happening in the sheriff's department?
Good evening, everyone.
Good
Good
evening.
evening.
No major incidents to report. Just as kind of a public service announcement. Milford Township, a couple of weeks ago, they had several daytime B&Es, so I wanted to make sure the citizens were aware that these individuals were breaking into homes through the front door in the daytime. So if you see something suspicious, feel free to call us. And on another note, I don't know how many people utilize the Ring video system, but if you do have it, they've started a new app that partners with law enforcement. So what they do is they'll allow U.S. citizens to upload video to the Ring app, and if you flag it as suspicious, it will then notify law enforcement to take a look at the video. Now, how this helps us is if there's a crime in an area, we can set up a geofencing and possibly get a better image of the suspect or the person that's doing whatever it is they're not supposed to do, and possibly aid us in the investigation. And it's also important to note that by uploading this video, we won't be able to view your live streaming video. We'll only be able to see what you upload onto the server, so there won't be any issues with us invading your privacy.
Wow, that's pretty nice.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lieutenant. Any questions for Lieutenant? All right, moving on to the Planning Commission.
Okay, we had 2 meetings in the month of February. The first one was February 10. We had 3 public hearings. It was on solar energy systems. We had the DT3 Lyon Township Special Land Use, which is on our agenda tonight, and their site plan. And that's all we had on that night. I apologize, but I did not attend the February 24th. My daughter was in town from New Jersey, so I didn't get a chance to attend that. We had a family dinner. So that's my report.
Okay. Anything you want to add to that, Brian?
I can.
I don't know if you want to add to anything.
Yeah, I can fill in. So on the 24th, we discussed lot width and lot coverage minimums in the New Hudson District. We held a public hearing on those. We also followed up on the solar energy amendments. Both of those were recommended for consideration of approval by the Township Board, so we anticipate that those will come back to you in April. We received a conceptual site plan application for 10 Milford Shops at the northeast corner of 10 and Milford. And after discussion, the applicant withdrew that concept plan. Finally, we had a conceptual discussion regarding event barns in our R10 district and how we may or may not wish to regulate those and allow them in the R10 district. So got a lot of work to do on that still before it's ready for any consideration by the Planning Commission and Board.
Thank you. Any questions? Moving on to ZBA.
There was no meeting in February, and we have a riveting meeting planned for March 16th, including the approval of the January meeting minutes and election of officers. Come one, come all.
Getting exciting.
Yeah, it's a doozy.
All right, moving on, Park Advisory Board. Robert, anything from the park?
Just real briefly, we went over my notes from the MParks conference and started going through some of the materials there, potential new grants to look at, as well as we reviewed a draft of a potential survey that we're looking to send out, gathering both satisfaction and needs and wants from people on Parks and Rec in the township.
Oh, great. Sounds good. Thank you, Robert. Okay, moving on, DPW. Bob, anything good from the DPW?
Just a couple quick things, John. To our public, we read water meters last week. Those bills were sent out and payment is due by the end of March the 31st. We had a wellhead protection meeting this past week, and we're always looking for residents that would like to join us. It's only one meeting a quarter, last Wednesday of each quarter. And tomorrow morning at 8:30, I'm meeting with the video class at the high school, where we're working on a video related to the expansion of the water system and things within the community that will hopefully be done by the end of this school year, and that'll be put on our website. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Oh, very nice. Sounds
Is
great.
that going to be South Lyon High School or South Lyon East?
South Lyon East.
You could visit South Lyon and see my son in that class.
Okay, all right.
Okay, well, that concludes the reports for tonight. Now we're going to move on to...
Tina's here.
I'm back.
Oh, Tina's back.
Sorry.
I was passed by.
Sorry.
Well, the good
Okay,
news is
Tina,
I'm going to be
talk
brief
about the
this
DDA.
evening. Thank you. I'll be brief this evening because the DDA did not meet in February for our regular meeting. I did want to let everyone know that we will be meeting in March, and our normal Tuesday date has been pushed to Thursday because of the election taking place on March 10th. So the DDA meeting will be on Thursday, March 12th, instead of that Tuesday. I did want to give you an update, though, on the database audit. So each year I go through and I audit all of our businesses that are in the community, and I'm still compiling data because we have a lot of parcels in the commercial and industrial area. But I can share with you that since 2014, we've added over 70 new businesses. So that's 70 businesses in roughly a 5.5-year period. And the exciting thing is that includes a wide variety of manufacturers, restaurants, service providers. It really is covering a broad range of different types of companies. And so that's very exciting too, because it's our commercial and industrial tax base that provides a significant benefit to the community overall, especially for our schools. And then with that, for jobs. So instead of creating some redundancy by having software here in the office, I've been tapping into the type of resources and tools that are available through Oakland County's economic development. And I recently had them run a report on jobs in our community. And so just briefly, I'll share this with you. Right now, we have 8,002 jobs in our community. And of those jobs, roughly 8% of the people live and work in our community, and 92% work outside of our community. So it just, we'll be able to provide more details as I get more accustomed to the type of data that we can pull from these tools, but it'll help us too with traffic volumes, the type of roads that people are using as they're coming into the community and going out. And what's exciting too is these tools allow me to actually go down to the block level. So we can now get job creation in very specific areas, and that will be very helpful for when we apply for road grants in particular, because we can see what type of jobs are going to be impacted, or the employees will be impacted in a specific area. So we're going to focus on paving, let's say a dirt road that's in the industrial area. We can focus now and get all the jobs calculated for that specific geographical area. So it's very exciting, and I'm looking forward to providing some more details as I continue reporting throughout this year. And that'll conclude my report. Other than Kite Fest, we need sponsors for Kite Fest and volunteers. And Kite Fest this year is going to be on June 6th and 7th. Yes.
Yep. And we are planning, the DDA Promotions Committee will be planning some additional events specifically in the downtown, so we look forward to sharing that information as well. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Sorry, I almost passed you up there. All right, moving on, unfinished business. Tonight we have Ed from Artesian of Pioneer here to actually talk about some pretty exciting things, I think. And, for everyone in the audience that doesn't know, Mr. Kidston is the person that has built our water treatment plants. And he's done a wonderful job. We have some of the best water anywhere around. So it's really been awesome. And we've been working since we started these projects to try to figure out how to really send the most quality water to our residents. And this particular part of this board has been trying to get accomplished since we've started. And basically what this will be is softened water delivered to our residents. So it's a very cool thing.
Thank you. I was glad you were MIA for a while, and I was getting a little worried. Good evening, and thank you. Just to update you where we're at with the project, sitting here tonight, obviously Woodwind has been up and operating for several months now, turning out pretty good, actually excellent water, if I may say so, with very minor issues there. We haven't had any issues at all, and it has sat there and operated as we had designed it to, and very, very happy with the results there. South Hill is almost ready to energize. I think this month we'll start doing some testing and energizing that plant. I hope to have that plant up and running full steam no later than mid-April, if everything goes well here. The South Hill wells are all approved now. As you remember, we drilled a third well that's been approved. The two existing wells were revamped and cleaned and added new pumps, low head pumps on those wells, just similar to what we did over at Woodwind, because they're no longer pumping to the system. The wells are simply pumping to the aeration and detention system, and we have high service pumps that pump it after filtration. The water tower is up and running, no issues there. We installed the bulk water station. I'm not sure, are you ready to sell bulk water yet, or?
Not yet.
Not yet?
We've got to talk about that. That's coming.
Okay, there's we get the billing system worked out there, and frankly, we need to do a little site work there because of the driveway was put in the winter, and we haven't been able to have, good enough weather to get back, and so we need to backfill around that driveway and clean up that lot as well. But as far as the tower and everything, it's all working fine. The controls are working well. Over the next 5 to 6 weeks, we're also going to be installing some transponders throughout your distribution system. We've chosen about, I think, 7 or 8 locations. That'll give us a real-time direct read of pressures throughout your system, so that we know exactly what's going on in all areas of the distribution system. So that'll be real handy as well. There will be that data will accumulate, and as I said, Bob or John or whoever will be able to read it on a real-time basis, which will come in handy too if we ever have a line break loss and we want to isolate one certain section to fix that leak. We'll know what the other pressures are in the other parts of the township, so that'll be handy going forward. Softening. Here's where we are on softening. the DEQ has shot down every single solution that we have come up with for softening when it comes to discharging the wastewater. When you soften water, you create a brine, or you take the calcium and magnesium out of the water, and you have to discharge it somewhere. Okay. Because of your sewer setup here, and because of the low levels of the ditches and creeks, however you want to say it, that flow in this area, we just have not been able to get any system approved where there's a discharge of water. So this is the path to softening the water, and we chose it because there's no discharge of wastewater with this system. What happens is you get the calcification, you get the calcium to attach to sand through a chemical process, and then the sand is removed and taken off site. Okay, so there's no liquid discharge with this system, which makes it very environmental friendly. From a standpoint of the liquid discharge, you're not putting brine in any of your sewer system or anything else. There's no sludge dewatering with it. It requires minimum labor. My guy that made the PowerPoint put that in there, but I want to warn you that this is a system that is proven, has been used in industry. On a municipal basis, you will be one of the very first, and you will definitely be the first in Michigan. We're building an additional system right now in Waterloo, Illinois, and there's a couple more that are in the works. This is the way of the future because there is no discharge. The environmental agencies and Eagle and all of your bureaucrats kind of are leaning towards this technology as we go forward. And so you will be one of the first, you will be the very first in Michigan to do it. And so looking at that tank is 24 feet tall, roughly, okay? And filled with that tank is normal NSF 4555 filter sand. Okay, you have to buy NSF approved sand, and it's delivered. And I'll show you as we go forward here. But this is the product you put in the tank. Okay, and then as you get the calcium to attach to it, this is the product that comes out of the tank. And this product is it's basically, I'll show it to you here. So what has happened in this process is we've taken normal 455 filter sand that's NSF approved for drinking water, and what we've done is we've chemically treated that water so that the calcium attaches to the sand. And as the water moves up through that chamber, the calcium will attach to it and the magnesium will stay in the water. And your hardness here is approximately 60-40. I think I have it, in fact. How do I go forward?
I'll just click.
All right, thank you. So it removes all the calcium hardness that's in the water. And your hardness, keep in mind that your calcium hardness is the scaling that these folks see in their households. You know, the calcium is what scales up hot water heaters. Calcium is what builds up on the rim of your toilets. Calcium is actually seen, you can see the grayness in your laundry because of the calcium. Magnesium is a much softer hardness, if that makes sense, okay? Magnesium is an easy pass-through, and it doesn't scale when you're talking about drinking water. You can get magnesium to scale, but it can't scale at the pH that potable water is, okay? So your magnesium will pass through this unit, but will remove all the calcium. And so your total hardness, right now you've got 205 milligrams per liter in your raw water of calcium and 105 magnesium for a total hardness of 310, which is 18 grains of hardness. When we come out on the softener side, the calcium will be almost totally removed, down to 50, and you'll have 105 of the magnesium left. So your water is going to be about 9 grains hard with this process. Okay, probably the only drawback to this process is that we can't get it any softer than 9 grains with your raw water, and that's specific to your raw water. That answer would be different for everybody, okay, depending on what you start with. All right. So what will happen is those pellets will form, and if we run 2 million gallons a day, we're going to discharge about 1.4 tons of pellets each day for every 2 million gallons that we operate. In the wintertime here, you operate at about 1 million gallons a day. In the summertime, you run 8-9 million gallons a day because everybody's running their sprinklers. So that'll vary from time of year to time of year. It will be much heavier load to release or to get rid of in the summertime, and in the wintertime, not that big a deal. 1.4 tons is, it's about a yard a day. So if you take Leslie and Tina's table there, that's about a yard of sand right there, okay, is what we'd have to get rid of each day. All right. From an operational cost standpoint, it's very, very competitive. For every 1,000 gallons of water that we produce of soft water, it's only going to cost 18 cents in chemicals. So it's very, very competitive in that regard. And it will require labor also that you have to add on to that as well. But when you figure $182 per million gallons, that's really economical. That's just the softening process, by the way. So what do we do with the sand that we accumulate? We'll talk to some concrete companies in the area. We'll talk to different folks that will take the sand. I'm not sure any of them will buy the sand. If you produced a lot of it, the concrete company would pay you for it because it makes their concrete so much better because it's got all that calcium and it makes the concrete flow a lot better. The problem is you're making a very little bit of sand compared to what the concrete company is using on a daily basis. But that doesn't mean that we can't work out some type of deal. But even if the worst case scenario is we have to landfill or deposit the sand, it's still a doable deal, and it's not cost, it'll still be cost effective. But we'll work with companies in your area and see if they'll take some of the sand. Your sand, by the way, won't be pure white like that because you got iron in your water, and it'll absorb that iron as well. So you'll have a little orangey tint to your final sand deposit.
And does the water go through this reactor before it goes into the filters, or does it go through the filters first and then?
No, it will go through this reactor first. Okay, which is totally backwards from normal softening. Normally you would take all the metals out of the water and then you would soften the water. But here, because we're going to pick up some sand particles as we go through the unit, we want to do it prior to filtration. So we'll go through this unit first, and then over to the aerator and detention, and then filter the water. So your water coming out on the other end is going to be iron-free, about 9 grains hard, and your excellent water will become double excellent. Okay, people will really enjoy it. So.
Well, 9 grains hard is pretty good. I mean, if
Yeah,
you get
9
much,
grains
if you
is-
get much harder than, I mean, softer than that, it's abusive to the pipe structure.
Well, Eagle will only allow us to go down to 7, so you don't want to get much more than 7 because it's aggressive. It will start causing lead and copper issues if you have lead and copper lines in the area. Not to bring up a bad subject, but that's exactly what happened in Flint, is they put out a very aggressive water. It leached, you know. When people hear that story, they think the lead and copper come out of the ground. It didn't, okay? They made a very aggressive water which leached lead and copper out of the existing lines. And that's what happened up there. So for that reason, you don't want to get your water too soft going through your distribution system, because the softer you make it, the more aggressive you make it. 9 grain water will be comparable to anything in this whole area, including Great Lakes. Great Lakes is probably 10 grain water, 11 grain water right in that area. I haven't tested it lately, but it's right in that same. And I'll tell you right now, if you can sit there and tell me the difference between 9 grain water and 10 grain water, I'll give you $100. It just doesn't happen. So, one thing I didn't show you, well, it's in my view anyway, it's right between Tina and Leslie. There's a hopper there, okay? We've tried to make this thing totally automatic so that what happens is the remaining, the sand waste goes into that hopper and the water's drained off of it, and then that hopper is just hauled away, okay? So it's not like we got guys in there with shovels and that type of thing. It's totally automatic, okay? And it will regenerate and make its own waste.
How does the sand get into the hopper?
Well,
we're not talking about 2 minutes a shovel again, are we?
No. I don't. Okay. You say I got a pointer on here?
The mouse.
Okay, this tank here is, this is a system out in California, by the way. They don't need buildings out in California, so, all right? So it sets right out in the field, just like, this is a working system, okay? But next to this is the pelletizer unit, and next to it will be a tank that'll just slightly taller, okay? And what will happen is the sand will be brought in a pneumatic load, and we'll blow the sand into that third tank. Let me go back here. This is Woodwind kind of laid out. This is your existing well at Woodwind, and this is an existing well at Woodwind. And right now, you have that big, I don't know if any of you have ever been to Woodwind's old water plant, but right now you have that big hydro tank here, and you have 2 filters setting over here. Of course, the hydro tank and the filters will be removed, and we'll put in 2 pelletizer units, each one capable of 2.5 million gallons per day, because the Woodwind plant will produce 5 million gallons a day. And then what's not shown here is the sand storage tank, and it will go in the center here somewhere. We're not quite sure where yet. We're just starting to lay this out now. But it'll all fit in the Woodwind building. And what'll happen is the sand will be pneumatically loaded into the storage tank, and then an auger will pick that sand up and deposit it into the top of each of the filters, the pelletizers, I should say. Okay. And that will happen on a regular basis. That'll happen about 1.5 tons per day if you're running at 2 million gallons a day, okay? So.
So how many days will that tank hold at that 2 million gallons a day?
Probably
Sophomore.
30 days.
Oh,
Yeah.
you fill it
So,
up every 30 days?
Yeah, probably have to get a fill in every 30 days. It'll be quicker in the summertime because you're using a lot more water. And, but yeah, it's not that often, every couple of weeks at the very outside.
Ed, the number that you threw out was 5 million gallons in a busy day in the summer. That is, I mean, capacity-wise, I mean, as far as softening for the whole system on a peak day, I mean, that number's just going to go up. I mean, it seems like we would need to have this at Southwind as well.
South Hill.
Yeah.
South Hill, what did I say?
Southwind.
Both.
It was across.
I'm sorry.
South Hill.
Yeah, both systems will get the softening.
Okay.
Yes. You'll have 10 million gallons, thereabout. You'll have, I don't think it's quite, give me real quick here.
While you're looking, you're starting at Woodwind, but we're going to do this at South Hill as well, right? Okay.
Both systems will get it. We're at, yeah, 3840. Yeah, 5.5 million gallons, okay, at each system. So about 11 million gallons total, which on your top day so far is about 8 MGD. Yeah, so.
That was one day.
And that was one day. Yeah, most days.
Normally, they're much less.
Yeah, most days you're down around 5, 6.
Yeah, that was one day in the
Yeah.
one summer, a couple summers ago. I don't even think we hit that last year.
No,
Yeah.
we didn't.
And this is, segmented. I mean, we can add on as the township grows. I mean, there's conversation of selling additional water. I mean, you got a lot of water under the ground. You're very blessed in that regard. That's one thing we need to do is we need to go back to Eagle now that we have all 3 wells approved at South Hill. And we turned off Tanglewood and we turned off Carriage Club. I want to go in and capture that reserve for the township. I probably shouldn't have announced it before anybody else does. Okay, we're already in the process of doing that, but we want to capture that reserve so that we can upgrade those wells at South Hill. But as your township grows, these things can be added to just like the filters can and so forth. And I know a really good water guy that'll help you do that if you want to expand in the future. So.
One time you told me that the aquifer under the ground here in Lyon Township was about the size of Lake Michigan. Is that?
Well, I'll get in trouble for saying that, but because nobody really knows. But the bottom line is you are very blessed with groundwater here, and you have no need to worry about you have a greater worry of water spurting out of the ground because there's so much pressure down there, or I mean, if you don't start using some of the water in great demand, they'll spurt out like a water well or like an oil well, the old Western movies. Okay, you have a lot of water there, and you can definitely expand your system as you grow. And frankly, both systems were designed in that manner so that they could be expanded. The way your growth is going, I mean, good Lord, if you keep Tina around much longer, she's doing such a great job. I mean, before long, you're going to have to double in size here, So, that's the key here is each one will be able to segment and make it larger as we go forward.
And I will say that we have spent numerous hours with the DEQ battling these filtration systems to get this water softened. It has been just a horrible time trying to get them to approve anything. You feel that this system is approvable, no questions asked, we should be able to get?
No, I don't want to say that tonight. What I want to, well, here's been the hitch of the whole process. I can get ion exchange softening approved by Eagle drinking water tomorrow. I can get nanofiltration softening approved by Eagle tomorrow. What I can't get approved is when I go to the waste side of Eagle and tell them that I need to discharge thousands of gallons of brine water, then that's when the red flag goes up. And that's where we've been, and we thought we had a really good shot here. About 2 weeks ago, we thought we had come up with a way to be able to discharge and meet their requirements. And they, I congratulate them because they didn't just say no. They thought about it for about 2 or 3 weeks, and then they got back to us and said no. Okay, but they did think about it. Okay, and when that occurred, I called John right away and said, "Listen, the only thing left for us is pelletized softening," and that's where we're at.
So I guess the question, I guess the question to this board is, by that presentation, do you want him to pursue this type of softening? I mean, we've exhausted, if we actually and truly want softening in the township, we're down to this method. And I guess everyone needs to ask the questions they want to ask right now, and then either you want it or you don't. We can continue to try to go the other direction, but it's a dead road. I don't see any way forward.
Well, whether you go with softening or not, and I know that's been a concern all along, you got great quality water right now, okay? This will add to your complexity of your right now you got great quality water with very little effort, okay? I mean, that plant sits down there and operates and no issues whatsoever. I mean, it just works all by itself. This is a little more complex this adds a little complexity to the operation. And I just want you to know that this will soften the water, but there will be a little more tender loving care will be required to make this happen. Which is true of any softening, by the way. Even if we went with nanofiltration, this is probably, this method here is probably the most complex because you got to keep the chemicals just right in order to get the calcium to attach to the sand. Ion exchange softening is a little more forgiving, and so is nanofiltration is a little more forgiving. If you happen to have ion exchange softening and you throw in, a ton of salt instead of 2,200 pounds of salt, which is what it needed, it's forgiving in that way, okay? This one's got to be more exact. It's going to take a little more TLC.
Well, John, when you asked the question, I guess, when we first looked at the new water system, we had looked at Great Lakes Water Authority, we had looked at Giffords-Webster's presentation and then Ed's presentation, and I guess the thing that sold me on Ed's was the softening component. So I definitely would want to keep moving forward with adding that softening component. And I know a lot of, not just residents, but businesses in the area too that use water for processing are looking forward to it as well. So I'm all for it.
Sean?
I would agree, and I would add on to that I think the price that we got for the softening system when compared to both the cost of going to Great Lakes and with the price that Gibbles gave us was a fraction of the cost. So we've done all these things and haven't raised rates and don't plan on raising rates, just delivering much better water, and this is just a step along those same lines in that direction. So I'm on board still.
I am too.
The other advantage that I didn't mean to go ahead.
I'd like you to
I just, first of all, I'm on board with following through with this softening. I did just have a couple of questions. So the biggest question is, would households still need their water softeners that they might have, or, I mean,
Well, as I've said in the past, if somebody's got a Culligan unit out there, a household unit, okay, and they're used to zero soft water, all right, they're probably not going to see a whole lot of difference in 9-grain water, but they are going to see some difference. So that really is going to be a personal decision. Now, here's one thing, and this is what I was going to say before we heard from the other three of you. I apologize for interrupting, but by softening the water, we will be able to tell the residents you can set your softener way back. It doesn't need to regenerate once every 2 days now. It may go a whole week between regenerations because we're sending them much softer water. And instead of sending them 20-grain water, we're sending them 9-grain water, okay? So that in effect also will help your sewer discharge issue that you have in the township, okay? Because if Mrs. Jones is using a lot less salt at her house, either by setting her softener back or eliminating it totally, it helps on the environmental side on the sewer discharge. Because all the water ends up in the sewer, one way or the other.
But the bottom line is, DEQ is not going to allow us to go below 7 anyway.
Right.
So we're never going to get beyond that point.
Right.
I mean, that's all we can do.
So, at least that's a good point. Regardless of what softening we put in, that would still be a personal choice of that homeowner of whether or not they want to have zero soft water or they feel that 7 to 9 grain water is suitable for their household, which I can tell you it is, okay? Unless you get a really, really picky husband. I was going to say housewife, but picky husband.
excellent choice. The second question I had, you mentioned that there would be some maintenance required, and I think one of the slides said 4 hours per week.
Yeah.
So we're not talking about having to hire a new employee at 4 hours a week.
Well,
There would be room for them in the new township expansion, but
I don't want to build any false hope here. And 4 hours is a very aggressive number, okay? Keeping in mind you're going to have 2 systems. Each system is going to need attention at least every other day, okay? So that means one system is going to need attention every day throughout the week, okay? Now, again, you will be the very first municipal system to operate in this manner, okay? So I'm saying 4 hours a week, 3 days a week, our partial few hours on 3 days a week is what is needed, but we don't really know when we start running at 5 million gallons a day exactly how much time you're going to be required. Because as I said, the key and the critical point here is that we keep the chemicals correct. And chemical feed pumps sometimes cooperate and sometimes they don't, okay?
We're there several hours every day anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not, I mean, we're there several hours every day.
Yeah.
So.
My point in the 4 hours is it's not going to be overburdensome, but it is going to be more time required than what you have with just standard filtration right now.
okay. And
Bob
then
can do it.
the last question I had is, you had mentioned that the sand is pretty common. I mean, is this something that, as far as our supplies, is it going to be in the peak times of the summer? Are we going to find a shortage of this supply or this sand, and then we won't? Like we're scrambling around to find it, or is this this is not going to be an issue?
No, NSF approved 4555 sand is, you can get truckloads of it 24/7 if you wanted to.
Okay.
It's almost unlimited, so yes.
All right.
NSF stands for National Sanitation Foundation. and they put their blessing on it.
Right. Anything that comes in contact with potable water has to be NSF approved. We could go, you're blessed with sand around here too. That's why you have great wells, by the way, all right? We could go out here to the local gravel pit and get sand and make it work in this process. But they don't have the NSF label that says that it's certified by NSF. So it does take a special sand to do that. But as far as making the process work, we could do it with normal filter, sand out of the gravel pit.
All right. That's it.
Are you good for
Oh,
him
yeah.
to go forward?
Yeah.
Okay. John, you good for forward?
I'm good. Move forward.
Michelle?
Yes, a lot of residents are still coming in asking, when can we get rid of our softeners? So
Okay.
please.
Well, what we'll have to do, just so you know what the process is gonna be here, we'll have to do a little pilot for Eagle. We'll set that up at Woodwind as soon as possible, and we'll start the review process with Eagle, and hopefully we won't have any issues with them. We'll see how it goes. There's really, I'm not even gonna say that, but there's not much they can object to here, okay? I mean, it's pretty straightforward. But any other questions about the overall project? I mean, hopefully you all have heard, John's kind of filled me in that residents are very happy with their water as of now, and we'll keep trudging along here and getting this thing done, and South Hill will definitely be done and finished and operating without any bugs, before the summer season hits and everybody turns their garden hoses on and starts running a lot of water. So we won't, it was a little stressful last summer, as you remember, because we didn't have the other 1 million gallon water tower, but we should be in really good shape this summer when we hit the peak period, because we've got that extra 1 million gallons of storage, plus we'll have 2 water treatment plants producing, and shouldn't have any issues at all. So we're in good shape. Okay?
Well, I say we just go forward.
All
Let's get
right.
it figured out.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, we're going to move on. We have 2 housekeeping issues. They're both ordinances and second readings. The first one is a drunken disorderly persons summoning public safety personnel without good cause, provide penalties for violation thereof.
I'll move to approve ordinance number 02-20, drunken disorderly persons.
I support.
Did you get this?
John Hicks.
John, support? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, moving on, we have the adoption of the ordinance for alcoholic liquor to provide policies and regulations for the insurance, transfer, and relocation, liquor licensing and permits. This is also second.
I'll move the adoption of ordinance 03-20.
That's second. Go ahead.
I'll support.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right,
Maybe that's.
moving on to new business. Okay, our first item of new business is the presentation of the expansion and renovation of Lyon Township Hall, which, as you know, we put some money in the budgets in the last budget season here, and we have done a lot of work since then. We have really come up with a pretty cool plan, and I had some help by the Linhout architecture firm, which is Brad and Hannah, who are here tonight to kind of give us a little presentation, and Steve from A.R. Brower, who did the construction analysis to help the architectures get to where we're at. With that being said, I'd like to bring them up. First, I'd like to also start this out by saying, when we started this project, we had talked about raising the hall here, going up another story here. That was my idea. It was a foolish idea, but it was a thought. Once Steve come in and started looking at the situation, the cost of going up was going to be far beyond what it would be worth. It was going to be the size of this building here, and It just didn't make much sense to go in that direction. So they came up with an idea that I think is very, very cool. And again, I'm gonna let Steve take over, and he's gonna just start to give you guys an idea how we got to this point. Now, in this presentation, on this board, we have numbers. We have some prices, some estimated numbers. I'd like to kind of keep them numbers up here on the table. And the reason I'd like to do that is because this is the first step towards getting the bid process opened up. I don't want to open up any hands to anybody that's going to bid on this. So if we can get through tonight and move this to get the designs put together, we would send this out for bid in the next few months. And that's why I'd like to keep all the numbers on the table tonight. Okay? So that being said, Steve, I don't know if you want to kind of come up and everyone has had a chance to go through the book and take a look at everything. And
well, first of all, I'd like to thank John and the other members of the staff that we worked with to come up with this plan. John's right, we did discuss going up. I didn't tell him that was a bad idea. It was an okay idea. We just think we've come up with a better, more effective plan for you. And Brad and Hannah, another architect at Lindhout's office, worked very diligently on coming up with what you see here. This is the concept. So you can see it's a single-story building. It actually now has a full basement underneath it, the addition, and a mansard roof. And we did that for a number of reasons. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to turn it over to Brad to just discuss with you or explain to you how this evolved by working with the township and why we feel this is an excellent solution to your space needs. So Brad.
Thank you, Steve. Well, just real quickly, we did start out with an analysis of the two-story scheme, and we did our due diligence. We looked at the existing drawings, analyzed the structure, what would be involved, and just being over a precast plank where we're at now, adding structure, verifying the structure of the exterior walls, it was just adding a lot of questions. We'd have to get into a new elevator. The existing elevator location would have to be expanded. You're talking about an elevator control room to go with that, and mechanicals at the back stairway, and the feasibility of having to add a new stairway for that second floor. The biggest thing we took away from that initial meeting was just operations. You guys needed to be in function. You need to be up and running while all this was taking place, and the idea of that second story scheme was really going to hinder that. So we really kind of took a step back before we did too much work, shifted gears and said, you know what, you've got some real estate to the northeast corner. We could come in with a single story addition that would provide you a full basement underneath that would meet your storage needs now and kind of look ahead to the future. What that would do is it would allow us to tie into that complicated roof line that we have going on right now with the different pitches, and it would let us take all of our mechanicals, anything else we need, and we could hide it behind that mansard roof profile. So there was definitely some advantages. Once we kind of came to that decision and presented it to the group, everybody kind of bought in, and then we proceeded from there. So I'll just really quickly take you through. As you can see up in the upper left, that is the existing profile. Lower right would be our proposed. We just kind of muted out the colors of the existing just so you could see where the new addition is and the true stop line. First floor, we're looking at just under 4,800 square feet. We would provide a couple workroom spaces, employee lunchrooms, different office needs, new men's and women's toilets for the staff. And the basement level, it would give full storage, and what it would do is there's an added benefit to that. There's a storage element right now that is below the addition that you guys did. I believe it was back in 2014. We could take that storage element and hand it over to the sheriff, which is in desperate need for some additional square footage. Take those storage elements and put it in your basement along with the voter storage room that is currently right now being used in the sheriff's space. So all those could come over to your control within your space, elevator access coming down to a stairwell access And so just a lot of it made sense moving forward and trying to get everything in the same footprint. And working with the township's engineer, we came up with a schematic site plan. This is basic, but it was just to get something on paper. We analyzed the existing parking, what the expansion would do to that. And you can see up in the, well, it's not letting me do that, but up in the northwest corner, there would be a minor addition to the parking area. And then in the far southeast, there would be another parking. Those two added areas onto the existing parking loops that are in place would give you the added parking that you would need. That would meet the ordinance. Everything would be up to par on that. And what it would do is it would basically, you can see kind of the drive entry just north of the proposed addition. We would get rid of the roundabout and kind of soften that curve, and you'll see from the rendering again, give an area for the flag pole to be a drop-off area, things like that. And so when we said we're doing the addition, it's an addition, but it's almost two-part. We're almost doing a partial renovation of the existing. I think about the only room that's really not getting touched is some private offices in this space right here that we're in tonight. To the north, and you can see the addition to the top of the screen. That would get all new finishes, all new flooring, etc. The area to the south, we would come back in. We were looking at kind of the areas in blue, new carpet, new floor finishes in those spaces. We're kind of reworking the existing office area to get more of an open office concept, adding to the front counter area, also adding new ceiling tiles and things like that. So it is a renovation of the existing spaces, but that's helping us tie in to the proposed addition. And again, this is just showing the ceiling tile, just the area of work. As I said before, we're basically not touching the room that we're in right now in the old stairwell, but we're really bringing everything up to speed and matching the level of finishes that we're doing in the new addition. And again, this is the sheriff's lower level. So as you can see, northeast corner, that would be the township basement storage addition. We would have the secure voter storage, elevator shaft, the stair shaft. And then the sheriffs would basically take over that old storage space below, and that would give them space for their workout room and for the locker room spaces that they need. It would also, by reworking basically the whole lower level floor plan, we're really able to give them a new secure entry vestibule and really heighten the security of that space down there. And again, this is just showing kind of the level of finishes that would take place down there as well. And then just again as an overview, the image on the left is the existing layout. You can see the parking, the configuration of the flagpole, and the existing footprint and parking. To the right would be the proposed addition. Tried to be, I guess, take a step back, let your main entryway be the main focal point of the building. Really didn't want to overpower. Blend in with the materials, blend in with the brick that's in there right now, and make it look like it's been there and it's in place. Here's just a rendering view looking from the northwest, again from the northeast. And this is just a real quick animation that we pulled together, just showing an overview of that addition and how that ties in. I know one component, you can see the entryway there just to the east side, or the west side, sorry, of the proposed addition. That would be a secure drop-off. Anybody that would have any mailings or billings or anything like that to drop off, we could give them extra or let them have access to the vestibule so they could drop that information off after hours. And I know that was a key component when we were going through the programming. But again, just the mansard roof really lets us height a lot of the mechanicals, cleans up the side yards, and you will not be able to see that from a vehicle as you're parking. As you can see, it just looks like a normal roof line tying into the building. So that is all I really had. I'd love to take any questions you might have or concerns.
Well, I'd like everyone to ask questions. I'd like them to, do you like what it looks like? Do you don't? Chris, anything?
I don't know, I guess, I know this is pretty early on, but you kind of touched on phasing. So this, if this addition were built, it could, obviously township functions would be able to be maintained. Once the addition is completed, then the staff would move into there, and then the internal renovations like carpeting and stuff would be able to happen. And
Internally, yeah, you're gonna have some crossover that would need to take place. Definitely, Steve could probably speak to that better than I could in terms of sequencing and schedule.
Yeah, Chris, you're on the right track. We would do the addition. Okay, that would need to happen first, and then as much of the staff as we possibly could move over, we would move. Then we would have to make some accommodation for, getting the other staff members. There will be, and I think part of the strength of this plan is it gives you some room to grow in the future. So there are some offices that I think right now would be unassigned, but some of the staff could move into those while we did the work in their area. Another part of this, from the phasing aspect, for the sheriff's department, we talked with Les about that, and we've included in the budget a price for a double wide office trailer to move them completely out of their space and do theirs. So, theirs can move ahead a little more quickly than the township addition just by virtue of the work involved. But the addition and their space can be done simultaneously. If the township decides that's how you'd like to proceed, we can do that. And so your new space and their new space would be completed before the renovation of the existing space went on. So that would, I think, help everybody settle in pretty quickly. And another point I wanted to make too about this plan is, your elevator now, I'm sure most of you know, it doesn't function. So this elevator that we've proposed is a full commercial elevator, and what you really have is a residential elevator. So moving things up and down, whether it be in the short-term storage, or if the township continues to grow and you have more staff, that basement can be converted to office space. It'll be fully occupiable. It doesn't just have to be storage, and it's designed for that purpose. So you've really given yourself a lot of options and a lot of flexibility to deal with your growth.
in terms of public access to the building, so you mentioned, so we'll still have the main entrance as it is
Yes.
today, and then there's the little drop off on, I guess it'll be the west side of the addition. Is the entrance on the east side of the addition, is that, I guess staff only?
Well,
Is
that would be
public
your
entrance?
staff. We kind of envision like a lot of your building inspectors, Dave and his group would be coming and going there. So that would give them, a good point of access, and it would be secure. And the same thing, the west side, Brad mentioned, that's not a public access there. That arrow kind of on the top to the little left there going out. But that's the vestibule he was referring to. The inner door can be locked so that your residents can come in and, if they have something to drop off, a bill or absentee ballot or what have you, they can do that right there and, then head back out again. But the building is still secure.
No,
Anything else?
No, I think a functioning elevator is probably a good thing for Michelle and getting the ballots up and down the.
Sean?
How long would it take? How long does the design process take?
I think we're probably looking, 2.5, 3 months, but it'll be somewhat dependent on taking these schematics and going through the design development and then the construction document phase. It's really important that we keep the township's involvement, the group that John's put together, involved in this. And, I'd rather sacrifice a few weeks on design to make sure it's right than, rush through it and not have the product that I think we all want here.
Anything else?
No, it just it sounds like we are meeting all our ordinances and everything with the additional parking. And I saw, at least on the site plan, some
Yeah, how many
water
extra
management too.
spots were there?
I think I
Parking
counted
spots.
35, so you'd have about a 50% increase of, the upper parking. I considered the lower parking the sheriff's parking, but your upper parking that, we had on the site plan, that is about 35 more spaces, and I think you have about 70 there now, so it'd be a major increase, and, we can get that. I believe that would all could be put in before the election in November, so I'm sure this place is very, very busy at that time. So having another 35 parking spaces for your residents would be, I think, great help to them.
That's absolutely true, because I parked almost on the north-south drive coming up on a presidential election.
I believe it.
Anything else? Go ahead and ask all your questions.
No, I don't
Please,
have, I
you
mean,
need to
some
ask.
like, I don't want to bog down in the specifics because we're not there. We're
We're
not
not
to
there.
the design yet. We're talking kind of macro, not micro. And I mean, I understand that this is going to be a bit of a process, and we obviously need the space and have been talking about it for some time now.
You don't want me to ask if we were going to be using wood studs or metal studs? Or
No.
I wasn't
Oh,
I think it was
That's
in there.
how
I can answer that question for you both.
Well, again, and you have to understand, and this is the first part, this has to be bid. If we can get the design put together, then it goes out for bid, and then that's when the competitive bids come back, and this is the first step towards that process. Anything from you, Penny?
Well, I've been working with John on the committee, so I've asked a ton of questions, and some of the specific things that we really like is we actually need the space. Another thing that we really like is we really have that large conference room to the east, and we don't like people walking through our office. It makes us all feel very uncomfortable. We're collecting money, ballots. We need a spot up here, and that's why, you know, we chose to get rid of John's office and our current lunchroom to make it a bigger, that to be a conference room. And it'll be blocked off so people can't come through the rest of the hall. We really like the vestibule because that's something, if we have a drop box in the circle driveway, which people really do use, but if the rain comes in a specific way, it gets in that box, believe it or not. And sometimes the checks come back, they're wet, you know, we have to dry them out before we can even deposit them. Same thing with Michelle's ballots, so we really like that. That way it keeps everything dry and safe and secure, and people can come in and drop it off and leave. So it mostly in the offices, visibility to counter space. I mean, I think we worked really hard on it.
That was one question I guess I had that's maybe more macro, is that a lot of the new area does not have visibility to counter space, it doesn't look like. So that was the only concern I had, and I don't know if you can send it further to the east.
I can't blow it up, right? Okay, well, this area right here, Sean, this is where the ladies that work with Dave and monitor that front counter are sitting. And so we purposely opened this up, you know, that this plan evolved a few times with input from Patty, Michelle, Dave, and Dave's staff saying, hey, we need to be able to see this, right? And we need to be able to interact with the residents and the contractors that's coming in. So that is why this is laid out this way. And they can all see that space, right? They're the primary people that have that interface. So, you know, again, the group put a lot of thought into how do we do that effectively, you know, both from a use standpoint, but also trying to do it in keeping in mind that we have to make this affordable too, so.
We also want to get Debbie off the front counter. I mean, it's just, she needs a space, a real space. So that would be down, you know, where she sits now, but she would probably go where Kathy is. Kathy doesn't have an office. So just, those are some of the specific things that we've talked about. We have to add some sewer and water people also. So you want to talk about the room with all the equipment?
Oh, yeah, we did get the mail room up there on the large room there at the top by the door on the west there. You see the mail room up there? Right now, our mail, everything we do is stretched out over the township hall. So when we get our billings in for sewer and water, our billing people run from the back of the offices where the printer is. They get them printed and they run to this room right over here, which has the folding machines. They fold them in there, then they run back to the middle of the township hall and start running the postage. So this room will incorporate our plotter, the folding machines, the postage machines, all the mail will come into that room, lots of counters to work with. All the scanning devices will be in there for all of our documents that we need to save on e-drives. It'll all be in that room, which is a big, big help for our employees here. She spends a lot of time running back and forth. Well, a few people do. So that was a big thing. I think there's up to maybe 5 offices that we have that we could grow into. So, I mean, it's got some future growth. We talked about social people and, you know, different things, and we'll have room for all that. And if we did run out of room in the top, we've got the entire basement that'll be water suppressed. And good for offices if we needed to put them down there. We've got daylight windows going in all the basement. We've got, I think we talked at one time about bringing down light tubes down the columns to give daylight into the basement.
Right, well, and we have, you know, this is the new break room for the staff, and so that right there and this right here are 2 big skylights. So it'll be, you know, very inviting space, so when staff takes a break, they'll have a real nice break room to use.
This thing has involved several times. We've had several meetings. There's been a lot of changes, and we come to a conclusion that we thought this was the best fit for the township.
Well, the extra offices too is when Carol's here for maybe a day and Leslie's here a lot. And our planners, but I mean, they're not permanent employees, but they still need places to work. You know, they could stay here and work for the day, but they're all over the place. You know, they share the conference room. They're in our kitchen even. You know, trying to, and then we need the conference rooms, the small one and the big one will be going. We still have no place for them. You know, they'll put their stuff in my office or John's office, or it's kind of crazy, but yeah, we just have no more room. So.
Then if you see the private office down at the bottom there on the right, just under the vestibule there, that will be the new inspector's office. So they could come in the back door, do their job right there and leave. They're usually here in the morning. They get all their assignments for the day and then they leave. So it keeps them in there. And there are a lot of times they're pretty muddy and
yeah, we don't
just
want
keeps
traipsing
everything in
people
that
out,
room.
too. Because they do. I mean,
Top floor.
we're so limited to what we have, where we put people in. It's just.
So that's kind of where we're at. John, Lisa?
I just had a question about the, fire protection. It says that the fire protection system is in the basement, or in the basement will provide an ordinary hazard level of protection, and the first floor and existing building will not be suppressed. Is that pretty standard?
Well, it's a code issue, and to do the basement and to meet the building code, because of the size of it, it has to be suppressed, okay?
I'm sorry, is it pretty common to not have the first floor suppressed?
Well, you only, typically you suppress what's required by code to suppress, but because we thought the township might say, hey, we want to suppress more, we gave the pricing to do that. So
Okay.
the first floor could be suppressed, it certainly can be. In the area that we're renovating, we gave a price to suppress all that. So if the township chooses to do that, it can all be done,
Oh, okay.
okay?
I think one of the huge benefits of your existing configuration is too, is you have a precast plank. I think it's a 10 or a 12-inch plank that separates you to the sheriff's level below. So you've got a pretty fire-resistant construction between the 2 levels as it is.
Oh, okay. And then I really like the police department part of the renovation. I mean, John and I have had a conversation about that. It's just nobody really wants to, as the public, nobody really wants to have to go into the police department, but to have it a little bit more inviting, if residents have to come in, it seems like it's a significant upgrade. So I definitely appreciate that.
It's a complete redo.
I thought it was like a dungeon by design, that you just were trying to scare people out of there, but I guess really they do want it to be nicer and more inviting and not like, like a trap down there. Yeah.
And you might get some matching furniture down there too, so that's
Right.
really nice.
Anything else, Lisa?
No, I think it shows a lot of thought and effort went into what's the best way to use the space and improve you know, with the mailroom and the workroom, to have it make sense for not wasting time to go from one side of the township hall to the other, so I like it.
Yeah, it's not just more space, it's just the efficiency of the space as well. And I think that's just gonna save time and effort and make everybody more productive.
John, anything you want?
I'm good with it.
I mean, I'm just,
I've
is there
looked
any?
at it a lot, I don't have,
Okay, so I guess where we're sitting tonight is if we want to go ahead and get this moved to the next level to get it to the process to bid, we would have to okay the design. And I think that's what we said. If, you know, do you guys feel like we can go to the design work here and get this thing ready for bid? Anyone?
I think it makes sense. I mean, we've gone this far, and that's the next step, logical step, so.
And I also added in your package the budgets and how it would be funded. And if you've seen that, it's very affordable, it's very doable. And we really don't know what the end price is going to be until we get this thing bid out. And the only way we can bid it out is move through the design portion. And I would like to let Lynn go ahead and design it along with Steve in the construction side so that they can work together and get the design and specs and everything so we can send it out for bid. That's what I'd like to do tonight.
And that's really a continuation of what we've been working on for a couple months now. I mean, like John said, it's the next step.
So do we want to go ahead and just allow them to keep continuing on this thing, get it designed?
I'd like to get it moving along and, or continue it moving and, you know, start getting some bids and make this happen.
Okay.
It makes a lot of sense, though, to have them do it, because they've got so much in it already.
Well, they understand where we're at. That's the key to this whole thing. They understand how close we are. And even if we go ahead tonight for the design, it's 2 months down the road before we'll get the package big enough to put out for bid, right? So we're still, if we okay it tonight, we're 3 months away from probably getting the bid out there.
And that takes a while too.
Would we be able to get some design updates, some monthly updates, just so we know where we're at? And, I mean, through this process too?
Would you be willing to come in like once in a month and just give us an update at every meeting and let us know how far away we are? And
yeah, we can provide progress sets, and we would anyway, because we need to do that with the team to make sure we're staying on the right track.
And not necessarily a big presentation, just sort of an update on where we're at,
No,
timing
just
and
like,
everything.
bring a flash drive, show you where we're at, make sure everybody's comfortable that we're heading in the right direction.
Right.
okay, so what do we need? We need a motion just to move this forward to design?
I would do a motion on this.
Okay. Somebody like to make that motion to move this forward?
I'll make a motion to move forward to bid this project. I don't know if it's anything more technical in our language for that motion.
To move it to the
Through the design?
to the design
Yeah.
ending to get the bid process started.
I'll
Yes.
support.
Okay? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, let's get this thing designed. Thank you. All right, moving on. Consideration of DD T3 Lyon Township Special Land Use AP 2001B. Do you need a chance to get that stuff out? Okay. Brian, do you want to start this process here?
Yes, I can kick it off. Thank you, John. Up for consideration tonight is a special land use for occupancy of an existing spec building in the industrial district, specifically Unit 5 of the quadrants, which if you can see up on the screen, I'm circling the property. In addition to that unit, the consideration includes the 2 parcels to the west, these long, narrow parcels that currently make up where Fleet Services once operated. You can see the hatched area is our wellhead protection overlay district, which requires that any new industrial user be subject to special land use within those districts. So if we were just in the industrial 1 district without the overlay, this is not something that would come before the board. This is just something that would be considered by the planning commission. Within this district is the reason that you're seeing this tonight. The other piece to this that we're considering is really, this has been presented to the township in a 2-phase fashion. So as it exists today, the building itself has been constructed, the site improvements, the parking lot, the landscaping, all of those types of amenities have been constructed in accordance with a site plan that was approved by the township several years ago. The user proposes to operate a distribution center, specifically for what they are calling the last mile of delivery. So products will be brought in to this facility, sorted and distributed by the package vans that you're seeing all over the place. Specifically, their goal is to send out packages within an hour of this facility and back in. So what will happen is delivery drivers will come into the site from the Grand River side. They will pick up their vans that are stored overnight in this blue area. For phase 1, they will head back out to Grand River, circle around Automation Boulevard, come back down onto the site, queue until they're called upon, and get vans loaded up, then head off-site and out to where they are going to be delivering. For phase 1, there's a maximum of 55 employees that would be operating at any given shift inside the facility. And there are 192 spaces on the proposed plan for van storage and employee parking for those van operators. For phase 1, there are no real physical improvements that are being proposed in terms of new parking facilities. The operator intends to make use of the existing gravel lot for fleet services. You can see some photos that were included as part of the application package. So that makes up these spaces for vans. They also intend to utilize some of this vacant industrial property, Unit 4 of the quadrants, for employee parking. If you looked at the site plans in detail, the Planning Commission requested a temporary walkway to allow those parked across the street safe pedestrian access into the facility. As a special land use, the Planning Commission reviewed the plan on February 6th and on February 10th and held the required public hearing, at which point they approved the site plan condition on special land use approval and recommended that phase 1 be approved by the township board. You'll also note in your application packet that there is a drawing for phase 2 of the site plan. Now I understand this is subject to change, but we want to make it clear that the Planning Commission has not reviewed this plan for compliance with the ordinance. And so the way that this has been submitted, we will hold another public hearing at the Planning Commission, at which point they would make another recommendation to the Township Board. So I want to make it clear that for the actual improvements, new parking lot, that sort of thing, those would all come back before the before the Township Board. Onto consideration of the review standards for special land uses. Compatibility with adjacent uses. The distribution facility fits in with the light industrial character of the district and as well as the master plan. moving on to number 2. The area is planned for and built out as industrial uses. There's a pretty large separation to any residential uses that are to the south of the property, so we don't anticipate significant impacts. The site already has public water and sanitary sewer, and we don't anticipate a change as part of the occupancy of the structure. There has been a draft traffic impact study submitted as part of the application package. As part of that use, we anticipate that peak traffic of all vehicles as a result of this would occur between 4 and 4:15 p.m. You would see approximately 53 new vehicles heading along Grand River westbound, approximately 40 eastbound as a result of this development at peak. In terms of detrimental impacts, there is a narrative that's been included in the application, and it states that there will be no manufacturing or finishing of component parts on the site. It's simply a pass-through for materials that have been ordered and are on their way out to their final destinations. We do note that the applicant has committed to submitting material safety data sheets to the fire department for review so that they are comfortable with the materials that are stored for cleaning and for operation of the assembly or of the lines inside. So that will get taken care of by the fire chief, or reviewed by the fire chief. In terms of economic well-being of the community, we don't believe that the proposed use would have a detrimental economic impact on the community. It's an existing industrial facility used for distribution purposes. We don't anticipate detrimental impacts that would affect adjacent properties. In terms of compatibility with the natural environment, and I want to focus on phase 1 here of this plan. There is no new pavement or new stormwater improvements that are proposed as part of this, and as such we wouldn't anticipate any significant environmental impacts as a result. There are specific wellhead standards, wellhead protection standards that need to be achieved through any special land use. We've talked about regulated substances in the material safety data sheets. The service facility itself just barely falls into the wellhead protection area, but the parking facilities themselves, there's no new construction of impervious surfaces that we would be concerned about at this point. We would save a lot of those concerns for phase 2. It's noted that there's no existing contamination on the plans, noted on the plans. The MDEQ checklist and industrial activity statements have been provided, and we don't anticipate any negative environmental impacts that were noted in that material. Finally, in terms of conditions, the Township Board may grant special land use approval only upon finding that the proposed use meets the following standards. That 1, in no way during construction or thereafter shall a project adversely affect the quality or quantity of water that's available in the wellhead protection district. And 2, that the project shall be designed to avoid substantial disturbance of the soils, topography, drainage, vegetation, and water-related natural characteristics of the site. Based on our review of phase 1 of the project, we don't anticipate any negative impacts as it relates to those 2 standards either. Finally, the Planning Commission, when they reviewed this plan, placed a condition of site plan approval that all of the necessary improvements for the final phase of the project be completed by December 31st of this year. So they put that condition on in anticipation that we don't want this phase 1 to be the end-all be-all mode of operation. We want to see, or they wished to see, fully formed parking lot that complies with our ordinance, the improvements along Grand River that are recommended by the draft traffic study, assuming that those won't change, will be installed by the end of the year, so that we can ensure that the final business operation can be successfully integrated into our districts and along that corridor. So with that, the Planning Commission recommended approval of the special land use, and based on those findings, we would concur subject to their conditions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Brian at this time? Leslie, you have anything I see your letter here. Do you want to add anything to that?
Nope, just reference our letter dated February 21st, and I comment on the timing, just like Brian has. Also, the frontage along Grand River would be required to have a 10-foot pathway, and we just noted in our letter that the applicant is proposing a short amount of sidewalk around the cul-de-sac, where they'll have some temporary parking at Unit 4. But other than that, we don't have any concerns, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, any questions, Leslie? Okay, is the applicant here?
Good evening, Lee Vandermeulen from Progressive AE, Grand Rapids. Brandon Harwick, who's project architect, is also here today, and William Clark, who's representing the property owner, is here for questions also. So I think that was a very good overview. I just wanted to point out a couple additional items that we wanted to bring to your attention, and was in, I think, my letter to you for the request for approval. But we are looking at no fuel storage, either phase 1 or phase 2 for the project. There will be no maintenance of vehicles on the property. That will all occur off-site. As Brian mentioned, there's really no manufacturing or finishing of product. And material safety data sheets for any materials that will be on the site will be supplied to the fire department for their records, so they understand what materials are on site. The other thing I'd like to point out is for the traffic, as Brian mentioned, really the peak hour for us is like around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The site, the drivers come in sometime like at 7 o'clock in the morning, and they come in on shifts. So it's not like all the drivers are going to arrive at the same time. So we really have it broken down into like a 32-person van arrival, and it happens over like a 30-minute period. So it's spread out throughout the day. There's not a real peak heavy demand during like the normal, 7 to 8:30 time period. So by breaking it apart like that, we think that will help with the traffic concerns on Grand River. And once phase 2 is complete, it's basically all internal traffic between the parking area and the building. So we think that's going to definitely help the traffic patterns. I think the other item, as Brian mentioned, we're really looking at phase 1 and phase 2. This is phase 1, which is very minimal disruption of the site. Phase 2, we have delayed just primarily because we want to get the building up and operational as quickly as possible. And by doing very few disturbance on the site, the permitting requirements are minimal, and it's really this special use for the wellhead protection is the major item that we need to address. The Planning Commission, like Brian had mentioned, listed a number of items that they wanted to see us take care of. Number 1 was a special land use with the Township Board. Number 2 is expiration date at basically the end of this year for getting phase 2 completed. The suitable use of the Unit 4 parking, and we're basically bringing that temporary sidewalk from Unit 4 to Unit 5 to allow the employees to have a safe route between the two buildings. Item number 4 was through some type of deed restriction between Unit 5 and the unincorporated properties or unplanted properties. There's been an agreement that's been drafted and the township attorney has reviewed. Basically, the only thing we have left to do is get a legal put together for the Phase 2 portion of the parking area, which needs to be attached to that. But in our opinion, that is as far along as we can bring it at this point until we get Phase 2 completed. And then the last item was basically any concerns from engineering, public safety, or the township attorney that needed to be addressed. And as far as we know, we've addressed all those items at this point in time. So I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, Carol, is there anything, I mean, has all that stuff been taken care of?
As far as I recall, yes, it has.
Okay.
We
All
looked
right.
at a couple different options, so.
Okay. So I'd like to open it up to the board for any questions if they have any questions about the special land use, and you want to start, Chris?
Sure, I guess going through the special land use criteria, and this is just for phase 1, correct, that we're looking at tonight, not
Correct.
phase 2. I guess my major question with the distribution center is the traffic impact study. You had mentioned that your peak hour that's being proposed for this site is not during the normal peak hours, but looking at the traffic impact study and the generation counts, it is showing that the peak hours are going to match up in the mornings between 6:30 and 9:30, and then early afternoons. So I guess
I guess so. If you think about when the employees from the building and themselves arrive, they arrive first for packaging organization and bringing them to a point where they can load the vans. That occurs anywhere from probably 5 o'clock in the morning till 7 o'clock in the morning, and then when the van drivers arrive. So there is probably a little bit of a peak, probably like between 6:30 and 7, but that's typically a little bit before when the peak hour is of normal business operation of 7:30 to 8:30.
I guess I'm just looking at the cover letter that you gave us with the Appendix 1 traffic generation counts is showing the total amounts of traffic going from 6:30 in the morning to 9:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
And that's anywhere, that's the bulk of it, and then there's another spurt just after lunchtime, which looks to end prior to the evening, typical PM peak. So I guess my main concern with this whole thing is that it is a distribution center and we don't have a final traffic impact study. So until we get that finalized and the road commission reviews it and the improvements that you suggest on here based on the draft study get approved by the road commission, I guess I'm not comfortable with moving this forward tonight until that process happens.
Well, what you're looking at there, though, is for the Phase 2 of the project. Phase 1, we're looking at probably 40 to... Not sure where that came from. Phase 1 of the project is probably somewhere in the 30 to 40% range of that ultimate capacity that you're looking at right there. Our traffic study was done through Phase 2 of the project, and that has been submitted to Oakland County for review, and the improvements that we're showing are for Phase 2. So I don't know if that helps that concern at all, but that is ultimate build out of the development.
And if those improvements are what ends up being recommended by the road commission, I know the planning commission gave a timeline for the end of this year. I'd like to see those more or less be finished before the end of summer.
Yes, and we're planning on submitting Phase 2 in the next couple of weeks. So I mean, that's going to come right on the heels of this Phase 1. phase one is really to get the building operational as soon as possible and get phase two going through the approval process. And, you know, we're thinking that we could probably get through the approval process by this summer and then build out before the end of the year is the goal.
Yes, sir. I mean, just the concept plan of phase two has some issues that will probably have to get worked out, but
right.
I mean, we're just trying to get through the phase one, and like I said, there's just some items on the traffic impact study I don't agree with. And another one was the growth rate of traffic being just 0.5%. The township has grown 37% in population since 2010, so 0.5% traffic increase doesn't seem to match up. And again, it's up, you know, the road commission has to go through this. They have the authority over these studies.
Right, and basically our traffic engineer discussed those parameters with the road commission, and that's what was settled upon on, you know, you have to look at it over like a 10-year period, not the past couple of years. So if you look at the growth on traffic on Grand River, it has increased, but it's probably not as much as you think it is. I mean, it's been fairly heavily traveled for many years now.
It has, but just to commiserate with the population increase in the last 10 years, 0.5% does not seem right. And if it's a discussion between them and the road commission, I guess I'd be surprised, because all the other traffic studies we've had when we've had developments come in have been higher than that.
Okay.
Anything else, Chris?
Nope.
Sean?
I'd agree. I mean, some of my concern is that, you know, this is phase one, but you're not wanting to do just phase one. You're wanting to do phase two, but we're looking at this in chunks. And so you're here, phase one's a little easier because, again, if it weren't for, as Brian mentioned, the wellhead protection overlay, you wouldn't even need to be here. But we know that there are already some really huge traffic issues out there. And with this being a change in use, I think it's not only our right, but it's our obligation to look at this and tell you that we expect you to make all of those improvements. If it's
Sure.
traffic lights, if it's $300,000 in road improvements on top of it, those are all things that will have to be made. And I would want to limit what, you know, you've thrown out numbers, you've thrown out employees, you've thrown out hours of operation, you've thrown out staggering shifts. I would almost want to condition that specifically, and I don't know how we do that because you've kind of just thrown some things out here, but I'd want to almost condition this phase one approval on that, because you can say all these things now, but there's no ordinance that requires you to stagger your shifts. But the traffic working or not being a bigger problem depends on you following through on that. And I'm not saying you're being dishonest. What I'm saying is you're not obligated to in 6 months from now be operating the same way as you're telling us if we don't condition the approval on that. And I feel like we want to not only have a requirement for you to be done with all these things before the end of the year, but to operate in this manner, because, you know, you're having employees show up at a lot that's not even connected to the operation, drop their vehicles off, pick up another vehicle, go back out onto Grand River, doubling really the traffic,
Right.
going back to your facility, coming back out again, and then doing the opposite of that at the end of their shift. That's a mess. I mean, so whatever we think the problem is now, you're sort of doubling that for whatever period of time it's going to take you to get phase two off the ground. You know, you're mentioning that only 30 or 40% of your traffic counts show up with phase one.
Correct.
So I think some of that could be offset, but like I said, it's already a mess. And so with the change in use, I think we are, again, obligated to make sure that your traffic is being addressed. And you're nodding your head, and I know you understand this, but, you know, an incomplete traffic study made me come into this room tonight thinking there's just no way. I mean, as we go through this, you know, we're limiting you to, I guess, 30 or 40% of your operation being able to move ahead.
Yeah.
We're talking about 55 vehicles. I think the action tonight, I would want to pull all of that information into this so we don't find out in 3 months that there's, you know, 110 vehicles, not 55 operating and being crammed in this lot.
Yeah.
I feel like I'd also want to know what the road commission thinks about following up with the traffic impact study after your phase two. I mean, again, I'm getting to phase two already, but once phase two is up and running and you really start getting everything nailed down, I'd like to almost do a follow-up to make sure that it is operating the way that we anticipate it will. You know, that's just a suggestion we can deal with maybe later. And again, I think it was a good idea on the planning commission's part to mandate all the rest of this be approved, because, I mean, again, the longer we drag this out, the longer I think it's a mess, and the longer it takes to get all those final improvements that will improve the traffic flow that we're so concerned about on Grand River.
Right, and the Plan Commission expressed some of those same concerns, that they wanted, they don't want this sitting for 2 years at 30 to 40%. They want us to move forward, and we're basically committing that we are gonna be moving forward. We want the building up to 100% occupancy as soon as we can, so I mean, we're not gonna drag our feet on that.
Well, and initially it may seem counterintuitive, but if 100% of your operation's running with 100% of all the required and necessary traffic improvements made, then it should be better off. We should be hopefully better off than we are with 40% of your operation running with the current configurations.
That is probably a correct statement.
Right. That's all I have.
So the bottom line, we'd like to have a final traffic study to move this forward. And I mean, how far off are we on a final traffic study? I don't really remember a lot of projects that came to us without a final.
Well, it said preliminary on it, but it was submitted to the county as a final traffic study. I mean, we basically give them the opportunity to review it and give us any additional feedback, but the feedback I've received so far from them is more of a specification type, this type of pavement, no geometric changes necessarily at this point in time, but they want us to look at more an analysis probably at Automation Boulevard to see how quickly a signal could be implemented at that location. So there's a few things that they've asked us to come back with, but once again, this is all phase 2 that they're reviewing, not phase 1 necessarily. So so that's what we're working towards on phase 2, is submitting to them improvement plans that would satisfy their requirements.
John, if I could just jump in again.
Yes,
My concern is just that we don't want surprises when phase 2 comes along, and I'm sure you don't want surprises when phase 2 comes along. So I guess what I won't want to hear in a few months is that, well, we didn't expect this, or we can't do this, because I'm sure if it was up in front of you tonight, we could all hash through it, and I feel like I don't want you to be less motivated to do some of the things that we are going to need you to do, and the road commission will need you to do for phase 2, because your foot's already in the door. That's,
We understand that. We understand.
And that is a concern.
Right.
I agree with that. Patty, anything you want to add?
Well, we hashed it out pretty good at the planning commission. I thought we did a good job, and we talked about the time frame of phase 2. But by the time they get through there, come back to the planning commission, and they probably will need to the end of the year to make we wanted the improvements done by the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
So you figure by all that, it's gonna take that long. I mean, you can't give an unrealistic, you might say you want it done by August, but they're not even, it's March. So you gotta be somewhat realistic. I didn't really have a problem with it, because what they stated here is exactly what they stated at the planning commission. They're already in the process of phase 2. They've submitted their plans to the road commission. I understand they want to get up and running, so that's why they're asking for the limited employees right now, because that's all they can do. So I really didn't have a problem with it, understanding that, the roads, I wanted the traffic light, but I don't make that choice. That's totally up to the road commission. I think it seems logical that they might require that, but I'm not that professional, and I don't run the road commission. So I did mention that at the planning commission.
Yes, you did.
So it's up, it's really up to the planning, or up to the road commission for the improvements. But we absolutely told them they have to do what is required. So for a partial, they're really just asking for a partial start so they can get up and running. So I probably feel different than you guys, but that's how I feel. I feel that they're moving forward. They've really wanted to come here. And, it'll be good for people. Order off of Amazon all the time. So this is just going to make it more convenient for our residents that are getting delivery. You can get some of it in one day.
Wait a second. I thought this was DDT 3.
Well,
I didn't know it was Amazon. Sorry.
That's all right.
I didn't see Jeff here, so.
Sorry.
Yeah, I didn't see as the owner.
Can I ask
Anyways,
a question?
that's how I feel. So
Well, since we have kind of a split in the board as far as making sure you follow through once the traffic, what about, could you put a bond up to assure it that would be refundable? I mean, what about something like that? What if they were to put up a bond to make sure that they adhered to the final traffic study and what's required of them to do? I mean, it would be totally refundable in my opinion, but it may make you a little more apt to say, okay, let's go ahead and get this thing moving forward. I don't know, would you be up to do something like that?
I think we could discuss that. I mean, I don't see a reason not to do.
I mean, it's just the confidence that
Right.
you're going to
We
do the right thing
Right.
in the end. We sit on this board all the time, and we have people promising a lot of things. And,
Right.
and when they get their foot in the door and they start the operation, it becomes almost impossible to go backwards.
Sure.
So, I mean, that's kind of maybe something that would get the confidence up. Any other questions on this end? Lisa?
Well, I have a lot of concerns about having an incomplete, I know you say that it's a draft traffic study. And so I called Leslie and I asked her a couple of questions and asked her some of the types of things that John suggested about, perhaps a bond, or do we have deadlines set in place, and what kind of deadlines could we have set in place? And when I spoke with her, she had suggested, a traffic impact study completed by and submitted by a certain date, and we could perhaps have construction, although I know Planning Commission had that kind of hashed out. But the biggest concern I had after thinking of all of these options is that it's still incomplete. There's still so much that I'm not really comfortable with when we don't have. I mean, we're dealing with phase one. We have 1 foot in phase one, 1 foot in phase two. So I share the same concerns that Chris has mentioned and Sean has mentioned, and I think that it would be alleviated by having a complete traffic impact study before us, one that has been finalized, one that doesn't say draft.
Well, and as part of the phase two, you will. The traffic study was prepared for phase two of the project.
Right, but I'm just going by, the item that Sean had suggested. You've got people coming out of the parking lot, coming back out onto Grand River, going back into, that I don't really, there's a lot that could go wrong with that without having enough real, I don't think you have a model that runs that particular component of going onto Grand River to get from parking lot A to parking lot B.
Correct, and actually the draft traffic study does not model the site in that way because it's a temporary situation, and we're
Right.
trying to, as quickly as possible, bring it to phase two.
Right, and I guess that's what, one of the thoughts that I had is that I understand that the impact study is for phase two, but we don't have anything that models what it is that you're actually presenting before us at this point. Is that correct or not correct?
Yeah, I guess you could say that's correct. Yeah.
Okay. I would like my packages quickly, so I like the idea of this coming to the township. I have a little bit of apprehension in this format.
Would the escrow help that situation, knowing that we are putting the money up front to make sure that the improvement does happen?
I don't know yet.
Okay.
Maybe by the time Michelle and John talk a little bit more, I might know. I don't know.
John?
Well, my thought is, we approved an industrial park some time ago. Did we not think the traffic might increase quite a bit? We want employers, we want jobs created in this community, and I think they'll address for their own, for their own selves, are gonna have to make sure the traffic flows, because they're impacted by it too. I don't doubt that they will make the improvements they say they will. One thing I missed, is there planned a connection between phase 1 and 2?
Yeah, I don't know if you can go to phase 2, I can.
Is that good?
Yeah, so I'll walk over to this. So under phase 2, they said that the van drivers are coming down this new driveway. They're coming in parking, they're getting into their vehicles, and they come out, and then they stage at this location here, come in, the van gets loaded at this location here, and then they exit out to Grand River.
There is a connection.
So for phase 2, it's all internal, and there is a connection there.
Where on earth will you fill these vehicles? Fuel them?
Where do they fill them?
Fuel.
Oh, fuel them. It'll be off-site. I mean, the drivers will fuel up as they make their runs.
Specific place, just
right.
Sam's
where
Club.
they need it.
So Lee, you got 50 or 60 parking spaces in a pond right now on that second phase? I mean, how do you, I mean, I'm jumping ahead, but how do you plan to address that?
We've met with the state already on that issue, and
It's a regulated wetland?
The side slopes are. The pond itself is not, but the perimeter of the basin is, and so we'll have to do some mitigation for that.
Well, I wasn't going to bring up the phase 2 too much in detail, but since we're talking about it, I know that's one of the criteria for the special land use and the wellhead protection is the project shall be designed to avoid substantial disturbance of soils, topography, drainage, vegetation, and water-related natural characteristics of the site. That on phase 2 does not meet that at all. So if this is going to be the permanent solution, I don't think it can be a permanent solution because it doesn't meet the ordinance. And so we would end up with phase 1, which, you know, by all accounts, at least in my opinion, if the traffic study gets done, doesn't have an impact to the wellhead protection area. So I guess I'm concerned that we'll never get out of phase 1. And we will be stuck with that as a permanent solution unless you can maybe somehow internally connect using that phase 1 parking lot over to the existing buildings.
But you were talking mitigation, right?
Well, for the wetlands, we would talk about mitigation, correct? I think he's bringing up, you know, some of the water quality issues of the existing pond and existing tree cover in that area. So, I mean, we understand that, and that's part of the reason we did a phase 1 is because we know it's going to take some time to get through phase 2, and it's going to be working with the township, working with the county, working with the state, and there's definitely going to be some issues that we're going to have to resolve working through that. So,
And you're held by regulation.
And in phase 1, I mean, the only criteria that hasn't fully been satisfied is number 4, which was the impact of traffic. And it sounds like you're getting there. So.
Okay, John, did you finish?
Yeah.
Michelle, want to add anything?
I was concerned, well, mostly because we've had residents come to the counter. Patty and I both have health people that live on 12 Mile, and their concern is coming out on 12 Mile, but the vans are staging and going north onto Grand River,
correct.
one way or the other,
Correct.
east or west. Okay, because that was a real big concern
I mean,
for a lot of the residents.
Right, there could be, you know, here and there a van coming down 12 Mile, but typically they're going
Hopefully
up to
they're
Grand
delivering down 12
Right,
Mile.
it
Okay.
just depending on where the delivery is.
Yes, I just don't want to see that everybody's like, oh,
No.
now Grand River, we can't get out, so guess what? We're going to use 12 Mile.
No.
Okay,
That's correct.
all right, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, Michelle, it was like 80% of the trips were going to be on Grand River,
Okay.
and the remainder, it was like 20%
Well, I'm
on
just
Napier,
voicing again,
so-
just residents'
Yeah.
concerns that have
Yep.
come
No, that's
after they
good.
were there. Patty and I both have helped a couple of people that were really, really concerned, and I just wanted to
That's
ask
a
the question.
great question.
Yeah, we kind of told them at the planning commission too that we really don't want to see, that's not their normal
Should be
truck.
their route
Yes.
every day.
But occasionally, you might get that. I mean, you can't prevent that. but
Right, I mean, if there's
If they're
delivery,
delivering
yeah.
there, and then they get to come back in.
Right.
yes. But, and plus, 12 miles not in the best shape either. You probably don't want to take your vans down there. But
That's true.
Well, I look at it a little different way, and I'm a very pro-business guy, and I think that business on Grand River is exactly what we want. I couldn't see having something like this happen on 10 Mile. I couldn't see it happen in any other place in the township other than Grand River. Grand River was made for business. I mean, that's our business corridor. Everyone and his brother is asking this company to come, okay? It adds a lot of value to the township. Everybody wants stuff right now, and that's what this is gonna help. I agree on the traffic study. We don't generally okay anything without a final traffic study. But I myself would say it would be okay in my eyes if you did an escrow account to make us confident that you're going to produce whatever the traffic study comes up with. I think that's a really good thing to do, and it's totally refundable, and if you don't do it, we can do it and give it to where it needs to be for the study.
Well,
How do we know what the total is?
well, I guess
Well,
what
I
I
don't.
would say is there's certain initial recommendations in the draft traffic study. Leslie could probably come up with a rough calculation of the amounts to complete those improvements, and we could have them escrow that amount.
I actually completed that Friday.
Oh,
There
you
you
already
go.
have
Same
that?
case.
Man, you're fast.
So the estimated with the performance bond requirements would be $316,600. That does not include a signal at automation. That's just what is recommended in the draft. So that's really the widening at the unnamed driveway, I'll call it, off of Grand River. And then there's some striping at automation. So, and that does not include the pathway. That was just road improvements.
So if you made it 350,000, say.
That would be reasonable, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, if this is what makes the township board comfortable with our proposal, then we would definitely be willing to do that.
And John, if I can just.
Please.
I want to make sure,
Step in.
I want to be clear in my mind.
Sure.
Okay, so we're talking about, when this is totally operational, how many employees will you have?
How many total employees? Well, on the largest shift, there's about 100, so that we're thinking probably in the 150 to 200 total
Okay.
employees.
And how many vans would there be then?
I
Full
think-
operation?
For phase 2, I think it's 350, somewhere in that range.
All right, so in phase 1, what you're proposing is how many total employees?
Largest shift 55, and there's probably maybe total employees, I'm guessing a little bit, but maybe in the 70 to 80 range at the most.
Okay, so what you're saying though is for each shift, there'd be no more than 55?
Correct.
Okay.
That would be
and
the
how-
largest shift.
What would be the total number of vans you'd have parked out there during phase 1?
What's required is about 150. I think right now on the plan, we're showing 190, but that's just what could fit on the site.
Okay, so
So we're-
150?
Yeah, somewhere in the 150, maybe 160 at the most.
So if we were to try to monitor this, because we're
Mhm.
sort of getting ahead of ourselves, if we were to approve phase 1, we might put a condition that says you're limited to no more than 55 cars parked on site per shift, no more than 150 vans on site at any
Yeah,
time.
probably we-
Until phase 2 improvements are completed
Yeah.
and approved.
And that's what I was trying to get
Okay.
quantified, yes.
I just wanted to make sure that I was understanding what you were saying,
Right.
because when they're concerned about traffic, I think your response was, yeah, but we're not gonna have everybody there. And I think if you say to them, okay, we will be willing to limit as a condition the number of people that are there, it might provide some security to them that, the incomplete traffic study might be okay right now.
Okay.
Well, what do you think?
I like having a bond.
Yeah, and I'm a fan of the limitation, because if they're agreeing to limitation and it's approved subject to, and we're talking about 30-40%, if those numbers then restrict them to that, then
We'll make that
You know.
motion. Why don't you make the motion to do that?
sounds like a lot of words.
It is a lot of work.
Can I just add one thing? The bonds in Lyon Township are cash bonds.
Cash bonds.
Just keep that in mind. They're not a performance bond.
Correct.
I love the money.
but it is refundable.
Yeah, we put in an escrow, basically, a
Yeah.
cash escrow.
Right.
And so just to clarify that this, we would still require, and I'll defer to Patty on this one, that the improvements would be done before the end of 2020, or
Yeah.
we can obviously invoke the cash bond and make the improvements in 2021.
I guess the only caveat I would say is as we get through phase 2 approval, and we're gonna be having more discussions on this issue, that if we see that there's no way physically to get those improvements in place, we'd like the opportunity to get an extension if possible, but, I mean, we'll do whatever we can to, you know, get through those
The goal
approvals.
is to reach the end of 2020.
Yeah.
Well, some of it's out of
Your
your control, right?
control.
It's
It-
permitting
it
through the
is.
state, it's
Well,
permitting through the county.
It's even out of the township's control. I mean, there's outside factors here that could delay it, so.
But I do want you to keep in mind, because I think this is something Amazon didn't realize to begin with. You do have to make it through our process. It does require public hearings, does require notice before those public hearings. So you need to get that phase 2 plan in ASAP, because it's going to take just even that alone a couple months or so to get through us.
Right.
So
Well, and
I
the-
think if you're doing that quickly, at least you're showing the township that you are going to be diligent. If you get hung up by somebody else, then the board can deal with that issue.
Right, and part of the concern that was expressed by staff was not necessarily don't submit phase 2 at this point, because it's gonna probably raise red flags going into phase 1, and you may not get phase 1 approved. So, I mean, it's kind of a.
But now, you know,
Yeah, at this point now-
if you are approved, please get
Right.
phase 2 in ASAP, okay?
Okay.
But the intent is to have these improvements done even before phase 2 is approved. Before
Yes,
phase
we're
2 is
going to
approved.
move as quickly as we can.
I believe
Well-
I believe you will too.
Well, phase 2 will have to be approved before the improvements are done.
Yes.
Before the parking lot
Yeah,
gets.
yeah, because you have to
installed.
approve them first. So they need to get in to get phase 2
I
approved.
think they get that.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, we understand.
okay.
We said exactly the same thing at
Yeah.
the PC, that, and they assured us they would.
Okay.
So are we comfortable with the cash bond and the limitations? Or, I mean, I think that's being pretty upstanding on your part. Somebody want to make that motion? Anybody want to try to carve that out?
Well, do you want me to try to summarize what I heard tonight? And then
Yes.
you could take it from there? I know there were some conditions placed on it by the planning commission, and one was the construction of the pedestrian walkway from Unit 4 for employees to get to the building at Unit 5. That there deed restrictions be in place with respect to the parking on the adjacent property in Unit 5. And we have worked on those, but that is still be a condition. We would have them post a cash bond in the amount of $350,000 to ensure completion of the improvements required by the traffic study. It would be, phase 1 would be conditioned on a limit of no more than 55 cars per shift, 55 cars/employees per shift, and no more than 150 vans on site at any time. And I think that's what I heard.
Can I clarify that last item?
Yeah.
So the 55 employees will not include folks who are arriving on site and replacing their vehicle with a van. So you may end up with.
Is that
correct
true?
me if I'm.
That is correct. The van parking and employees for the vans park in 2 separate locations.
So that 55 is parking here in Unit 4 and parking on site on Unit 5. And then the 192 is people arriving, picking up their vans, and leaving their primary vehicle on that site. So you're going to end up with theoretically 192
More vehicles.
vehicles that are
Okay,
sitting.
that's not what I understood you
They're
to
sitting
say.
and parked during the time when the delivery vehicles are going in and out.
So in other words, there's potentially 250 cars arriving for a shift around the same time. Is that correct? Is that correct?
No.
No,
Okay.
because they're coming in one car, getting out and getting into one that's there already.
Except for the other 55 employees.
Correct. The 55 are actual employees of the
Okay.
company.
All right, I didn't understand you correctly then.
I think they're doing the sorting and the.
So you have no more than 55 employees that'll be parked on the Unit 4,
That'll be working within the building itself.
and you'll have no more than 150 vans, and therefore no more than 150 cars coming in, correct?
Correct.
During phase 1 of the other parking.
Correct.
That's what I recall.
And by comparison, that's probably less than Magna has parked in their parking lot, right?
Probably has.
Or exotic. Zeiss. Zeiss is a huge building.
Okay, you summarized that. Do we understand it, is the question. You
Well, I
guys
don't know if
understand?
anybody has anything else, but that's what I jotted down when people were talking, so.
Okay, so, does anyone want to try to carve that up? Do you want to kind of word it, or was that the wording?
Well, is someone prepared to make a motion?
Is anyone here ready to make a motion for this? Anyone want to make it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll make the motion to approve this is their,
Special land use.
this is the special land use with the approval of what the planning commission said, along with Carol, the $350,000 cash bond, the 55 employees, the 150 vans, whatever the CES letter is dated February 21st, the McKenna letter dated
February 22nd.
the 22nd, with approval for phase 1.
I would support that and just add any other conditions that were made by the planning commission that just weren't picked up tonight. And I would also just reiterate that this is for phase 1 only, and special land use will need to be obtained before the other 60 to 70% of this operation can unfold.
Are you okay with that, Ed?
I'll
You still
amend my
support?
motion.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
What was
Aye.
that? Was there a second?
Yes.
Oh,
Sean.
Sean did.
Sorry about that.
All those opposed?
No.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Keep in mind, though, you want to stay on that December 31st, 2020, because, you know, it's a condition of your phase 1 approval, so you'd be in violation of your special.
All right. Moving on to the presentation of the library. Come on up. It's taken a while, but we got here.
What?
It's taken us a while, but we've got here.
Hey, you guys want to get up and jog around a little bit? It's a long time to sit.
I'd never sit back down.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Hello.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks
So
for coming.
it says on the agenda that this is a presentation for future planning for the library, but before we get to the future part, I just kind of want to recap a little bit of history of what's been going on at the library for the last little bit.
Oops. How come we have?
I don't.
Do you want?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
She's
That's
okay.
okay. I'm like, that's
Wait a
not
minute,
my
that's not her
slide.
presentation.
Whoops. It's okay. Ta-da. Thank you. So I basically just wanted to give a little bit of narrative about what's been going on at the library. So this gives us a little bit of recent library timeline. In 2015 and 2016, the library engaged Quinn Evans Architects to conduct a needs assessment and site assessment for a new library in Lyon Township, that project was on the ballot in 2016 for a new library and operating millage for a 24,000 square foot facility that was going to be $8.5 million to build, and for a new operating millage that was 1.585, which did not succeed at the ballot. So we came back in 2017 because our current operating millage at that time was expiring, And we replaced it with an operating millage that was 0.89, which is an increase of 0.3695 mils over the millage we had at that time. So in 2018, our new operating millage started. And when we were on the ballot for that millage, we made a lot of promises to the public about what we were going to do with the extra funding at the library and staying in the facility that we had already been in. We were going to increase evening and weekend hours. We were going to offer more downloadables, not just books and audiobooks, but music and magazines. More events and programs, especially for children. Digital resources for research, homework help, foreign languages, and consumer research. And by digital resources, I mean databases, however you want to use that term. We would have children's accessible technology in the library. We would have the removal of rental fees for our movies, which we used to have for $1 a day for all of our new titles. Mobile hotspot lending, and an increase in community outreach and engagement. So, promises fulfilled. What did we do once we got that new operating millage? Well, starting right off, we opened till 9 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and we added additional hours on the weekend, adding 624 service hours per year at the library. In our digital content offerings, we've added a lot in downloadables and databases. What you see here are the different icons for Morningstar, which is an investment software. The next is Tumble Books, and that is for online audio and ebooks for children. That orange one, that's Mango Languages, so that's foreign language learning. Consumer Reports, which allows people to do research on things that they might want to purchase. The next is Creative Book, which is an online video database that has thousands of database on how to do crafts. Canopy, which is a streaming service. It's kind of like a Netflix. It actually has the same interface where you can log in and stream movies. There's a lot of classics and educational movies. RB Digital, which is for downloadable magazines, of which there are over 1,000 titles. Newsbank, which is a newspaper database. Universal Class, which is an online class service, which can be used just, for continuing education credits for a lot of different people, but it also just opens up for online learning for computer basics and a whole list of other titles. Reference USA, which is a small business tool, which I know a lot of people within the chamber utilize that tool with us. And then Hoopla, which is a downloadable site that's for books, audiobooks, music, and TV. Prior to our millage, the only thing that we had was Overdrive, which is still probably our most popular one due to the amount of titles that are on there because we own the titles through our consortia, so it has the buying power of over 50 libraries. But we're able to add something that's called Overdrive Advantage, where we could purchase titles that would be for exclusive use by Lyon Township residents, so we could buy titles that we knew that were going to be very popular. So we added more events and programs. In 2018, we saw a 51% increase in the number of our youth programs offered, and an overall 36% increase in the number of attendees, and that was over 2017. So over 7,000 people attended our programs in 2018. Now we installed 4 tablets, iPads that have child-appropriate content and apps, and thankfully headphones for the children to have access in the library. So we added 5 hotspots in 2018, and so the hotspots, if people aren't aware, those are for, you can have internet access. It's been very popular, so we added 5 more. They are never on the shelf unless they are on hold. And those are only for our patrons. It's not like it can go out to anybody in the system. They're exclusively for Lyon Township residents. And they are now a part of what we are calling our library of things. We have lots of things that we check out. One of them is we have currently over 20 kits that are STEM kits. We call them discovery kits that go out for children. And there's a microscope, there's all sorts of things that can go back, so like with circuits, snap circuits, that they can take home for a week, that they can do science experiments or hands-on learning, and then come back to the library. And those are incredibly popular. We're also in the process of cataloging more. And we also have stuff for the adults. No STEM kits yet, but you know, I'm not going to judge anybody if they want to take home the snap circuits. But we do have things like an auto reader, so if you want to hook it up to your car to see what's wrong with it. We have thermal heat detectors, so I'm not even sure how any of those really work yet, but they're there. We did immediately within 2017 remove the rental fees for our movies. And we increased outreach to Southline community schools, area preschools, daycare centers, and community organizations and businesses. We've worked with the Lyon Township area businesses to provide over 2,500 prizes and vouchers during our summer reading program. And from our local businesses, those were valued at over $50,000. So we were very excited to be able to work with those businesses. We also received grants through Oakland County Parks and Recreation and through Michigan's LSTA, that's Library Services and Technology Act. And that was also to support our purchasing of the STEM kits, and that's through a federal grant. So this shows some of our library uses. So it shows through 2017 and through 2019. And I didn't send you guys annual reports, but if you're interested, I brought our 2017 and 2018 annual reports. There's copies of those back on the table that has more statistics than what I'm providing here. So you can see how, we've definitely, I think, our probably most significant increases are in library visits and a steady increase in library card holders, which doesn't look as, fancy there because it's compared to the over 100,000 in items checked out. But 59% of households in Lyon Townships have a library card. And that's because we have found certainly is that you can have a household of 5 people, but only one person has a card because not everybody wants to deal with every kid having a card and then they can't find the card. And so even though it says only 6,014, at the end of 2019, it's representative of more health. It's not, comparative. We have to look at it from households. And we can see where that is because we can go through our library card database and identify individual addresses so we can take out and look at that as a larger picture. Library partnerships. So we are in our second year of a library card for every 6th grader initiative in Lyon Township. And this year we'll be visiting 6 elementary schools. We started with 2, added 2 more last year. Now we're going to be up to 6, where we go in and do presentations in the fall as a library card drive. So, and when we do that, it's not just focusing on the 5th graders, it's also their siblings and their parents. So when we are reaching out to them, we're trying to make them aware of the services that are available to them. And so also the kids can have a card. As kids go into middle school, they have to do research, more homework. And so this is kind of our ploy to say this is like, the best time to make sure that you have a card. We've created partnerships with Southline Area Recreational Authority, Southline Education Foundation, Oakland County Schools Great Start, Michigan Alliance for Families, SCORE Counseling, and the Census Bureau, as well as over 20 local businesses. And there's more than that, but I didn't want to read it all. So but there's more of that's in our reports. Community service. We are really trying to offer more community services at the library that some people may think are kind of outside of typical things that a library would do. We have this year we'll have 7 annual blood drives. I think we had 6 last year, and we're kind of their go-to person now. They're booked long before they actually show up. We're, for some reason, their most popular spot. We offer 4 electronic recycling events for Lyon Township residents where you can bring us your unused electronics. And then the day before that, we offer a technology take-apart where kids can come in and they get to wear goggles and use tools and rip it all apart. And then the truck arrives to take it away. It's incredibly popular. We also have the mobile Secretary of State come. That's also very popular with our residents. They're constantly calling to know when they're going to come back. We're now offering SCORE small business counseling, and those are one-to-one counseling sessions. We offer monthly free notary service. We are pretty much the only people that offer tax forms anymore, such as they are. And we also offer one-on-one technology sessions that were over 285 conducted in 2019. There has been kind of a push away from offering computer classes because it gets difficult now that everybody comes in with their own smartphones, their own devices, and it's hard to train everybody on at the same time on all of their individual devices, so it ends up better to have the one-on-one. And we also help to manage the Lyon Township community garden plots. And we've also been working on building our collections. We have 18 launch pads for ages 3 to 10, and this is actually a preloaded tablet that the kids get to take home that has educational software based upon their age. I only know that there's 18 because I paid for them, but there's, I think, only one on the shelf at any given time. They're incredibly popular and they're always checked out. We have a seed library. We actually utilize our old school card catalog that when you pull them out, there's not cards, there's little packets of seeds. And that's our popular also with our people who use the community garden, but just in the community as well. It supports our sustainable living collection, which is for fermenting, cooking, food saving. We have a very good genealogy and local history collection and research. We actually staff a genealogist, and she works with people for one-on-one research sessions, as well as roundtables for discussion, a genealogy book group, and at least 2 programs a month. We started adding multiple copies of hot titles to cut down on the wait list for our patrons. And we've been improving and updating our nonfiction collections, which were in sore need of some attention. We created a tween collection, which is kind of separate from the teen collection, but they're a little bit too old now for the chapter books in the kids section because we kind of paired that off. And we've just, in general, been increasing our children's collections due to want and need. We also went fine-free in June of 2019. Patrons are still charged if the item is damaged or if they never bring it back. There's like a, you can renew it so many times, and then there's still a weight limit, and then you're like, okay, you haven't brought our stuff back. And eventually they'll get charged for the item itself. That makes them bring it back. But we no longer charge the late fees. It's a growing state and national trend, and we honestly have not seen a big difference. We wondered what would happen. Are people going to not return their stuff on time? And it hasn't really been a problem. People still bring their stuff back. And basically fines were less than 1% of our revenue anyway, so it wasn't that we took a big hit. So in 2018, so basically what happened is that once we got our millage, we fulfilled all of our millage promises in the first year. It was great. We had money and we could do everything that everybody wanted. It was a huge shift in our service to be able to say yes instead of no, because we got really tired of saying no, we can't do that, we don't have the money, we don't have the budget, and all of a sudden we could say yes. It was fantastic. However, moving forward, we're like, well, now what? What are we going to do to improve our services in the future? So we wanted to make sure that we were doing what the community wanted. So we engaged an outside company to help us conduct a strategic plan to better understand community needs and library trends to create a vision of library service for Lyon Township. We conducted a community-wide survey, which had a fantastic rate of response. It was a 4.2% individual response with 11.4 household response rate. And apparently they were surprised. I said normally you only get 2% at best. So our public was very happy to give us their opinions. We also did some focus groups at the library too, so we could engage certain members of the community to come and do some interviews. And respondents, basically, they wanted more of everything. They want more collections, more programs, and more space. So what did we learn? The majority of our users come to the library primarily to check out books, movies, and attend a program. Because we do offer a lot of different services. meeting space and tutoring. And so we wanted to make sure what are people really utilizing the library for? And they are still utilizing it to come in and check out a hard copy book, movies, and to come to our programs. Residents want more of those books and movies. They want more programs. They want additional book drops. They want more space, a larger children's area, more seating, and an enhanced outdoor area. We have significantly less space per capita than any other library in the area by a factor of 4 to 6. And while millage revenue is close to average statewide for Class 4 libraries, it's significantly lower per capita than other local libraries. However, percentage of card holders is on track with Class 4 averages. But what did come out of that is our strategic initiative. So what is it that we are trying to do as an institution to serve the community? We want to work on community building, enhanced technology, team building, digital content and platforms, programming, building awareness to the community through marketing, expanded collections, and a bond ballot initiative to build the new library that people want the space for. It also led us to do SMART goals, and these are basically trackable annual goals that are created by the staff and approved by the board to work in conjunction of, like, basically what is it that we're going to do in this given year that will support our strategic initiatives. In 2019, we only had the last 2 quarters that we could go through to simply because of the timing of when the strategic plan was finished. And we met most of those goals. We had a couple things that didn't get done just due to time, and they just got pushed over to 2020. But our 2020 goals have been created, and they've been approved by the board, and we will be putting all of those up on our website. So anybody wants to know what we're up to, it'll be on those to be able to track on there. And this is kind of our one-page strategic plan, because not everybody wants to read the whole strategic plan. And for anybody here tonight in the community, I have copies of the strategic plan back there with our annual reports as well for anybody who's interested. So that talks about some of our, what are we doing? We want more collections, programs, and services. We want to be that community hub and have more enhanced technology for collections, programming, marketing, and messages, and to work towards a bond ballot initiative for a library of the future for the Lyon Township community. So future library design. In 2019, we brought Quinn Evans back to help create a plan for a new library that was based on all of the work that was done for the 2016 needs assessment, because we didn't feel like we wanted to go back and redo all of that if we were current enough. We wanted to incorporate our strategic plan and community surveys and feedback. And we also wanted to include for that new plan the feedback from the 2016 New Library Initiative that the plan was too large. And so we took that into account and we went for a smaller facility. Our project priorities were flexible space, community hub, enhanced technology, and more collection space. So at this time, so now that I have gone through all of the nitty-gritty, I'm going to pass over some of the conceptual work to Joshua, who is one of our trustees.
Hi. So with the Quinn Evans engagement, we looked at what we needed with our goals and what we needed to do to meet the community's needs that we derived from the community study. So as you see here, this is the property on Milford and Mill Road. Which we're using which was brought up in the 2016 ballot initiative. So we've just gone with that to show what we're planning. Keep in mind that this is all still conceptual. Nothing's been finally approved by the board as far as the budget for the needs of it, as well as the individual actual building itself. Although we have discussed it, and it pretty much reflects what the board's thinking. So as you can see here, this is the library interior. It's going to feature a technology center of about 880 square feet. The youth program area is separate from just what we have now. If you've been to the library for the community, it's kind of one big room with a whole bunch of stacks. So we've taken it and really thought it out and decided that, like, for the youth program area, it's about 400 square feet. This incorporates also an outdoor activity patio, as well as a playscape area, so we're kind of adding in like a mini park into the library as well, so that way if the parents can utilize both sections of the library and the outdoor stuff, as well as an outdoor reading facility down there kind of in the corner, or right in the middle really. We've also added an AV section of about 475 feet, as well as we were talking about the genealogy, we've added a genealogy room to itself, which is about 217 square feet. Some of the bigger areas, the adult collection is going to be expanded to about 4,786 square feet. All of this is in response to the community outreach and the fact that we want to make sure that, excuse me, not only do we have room for our staff, which we're sorely lacking in the building that we're currently occupying, that we're also allowing space for our community members to actually sit in the library rather than checking a book out and sitting in the car because we have no room within the building itself. Some of the other important things that we wanted to bring up as far as the why now, as we said in 2018, we conducted a community survey, and it really brought home the idea that the community needs and wants a new library. Currently, we're operating our programs, about 7,000 people are attending them annually, out of a population of about 20,000. So that's 1/3 of the population of South Lyon is coming to our programs where we don't even have the space to really host it properly. Let's see. We're having a hard time meeting the needs of these programs in space only. Space is really kind of our biggest issue. Right now, we're having to extend the program hours into Friday night, well beyond what a normal program would go, just in order to meet the needs that the community really is asking for. Our community is growing, as we're all aware, as the township's aware. You guys are needing to expand the township for the same exact reasons that we are. Our community is exploding, and we need to make sure that the library is meeting the needs of the community that's present now. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to our other board member, Amy Deeds, to discuss the property itself.
Paper, old school. So why are we asking, sorry, I can't see the glasses on. Why are we asking for the Mill River site? As we said, in 2016, our millage proposal, we looked at 9 different sites then, with the help of Chris Enlow and the previous planner, and looked at all the options available to us. We held 3 community meetings that were public, and some of you attended those. We asked, during those meetings, we asked for the public's opinion on which sites they liked and why. And it really came, everyone's agreement that the Mill River site was the best, the most economical choice for several reasons. It is one of the most centrally located sites that met our needs, is visible to the public, and would be an attractive use of the land, complementing Abbey Park and the Mill River subdivision, since it sits right there on Milford Road. It is accessible to the rail trail, so people could walk or bike, including the New Hudson residents. It gives immediate access to the public gardens, which we are now managing. Our Pam, our library technician, she advertises the garden, she schedules the plots, she does programs that are oriented towards these gardens, and all of them are fully booked. I can't get one. And probably most importantly is that the other sites really were cost prohibitive because of site development costs and because of purchase costs. Since the township community already owns this land and it is more fiscally responsible for us to choose it, it would be less of a cost to burden the taxpayers with to build an improved functional library on this site. As you've heard, we have a significant number of residents who have a library card. They utilize this library. We've asked the public what they need from the library, and they've asked for a bigger, more functional space for their families to use. The library board wants to react to that now. Historically, the land was given to the township, to the community at no cost, and for the purposes of a library. So we're asking that all of you give the residents the opportunity to vote and decide for themselves the future of the library. We hope to work together with the township to build a library that would add benefit to the residents and to the community. Thank you.
Okay.
As a township resident for the past 35 years, I have not been a Lyon Township Library patron until about 7 years ago. I went to Salem, South Lyon, when I needed a library. And I don't know whether you are all aware of it, but we have an unusual library. Just as the township has a war dog park where service animals can be laid to rest, we have a library that is different from Novi, Salem, South Lyon, or Brayton. Our library is a designated family history center, which means we are affiliated with the center in Salt Lake City, Ancestry. With assistance from our very knowledgeable residential genealogy librarian, Kathy, we are quite proficient in what we do. We have a genealogy reference section that is excellent for research. It is growing as people donate books to assist others. We have a genealogy group of men and women who meet regularly, at least once a month. We have extra meetings for speakers who come in, and we sometimes have field trips. Our last meeting had 15 members present, with at least 10 not present. We assist each other with our blockages that we hit those stone walls. Did you try this? Did you try that? Other uses of the library, my personal use, I have personally used the tables, protected with a cutting mat to place fabric on it and cut it, because I don't have anything at home large enough, and I can lay everything out. I have used them for wool plaid to make plaids for a wedding, a Scottish plaid. And it saves mistakes to have my fabric color copied, that I can use the copies to make a basic layout of what I want to do with a quilt. Some fabric I cannot replace. It is too expensive or just can't be found because it's too old. When I was a young girl and visited my local library, I walked a mile. Unheard of today because kids have to be driven everywhere. But we were instructed to use quiet voices. That became inside voices. And today that doesn't exist. If we were loud, we were shh, shh. That became extinct. We got too loud, we were told to just be quiet, and if we got too loud, we were kindly shown the door. There was no back talk about behavior. The librarians knew who we were and would call your parents. Another rule was no running. Somewhat sadly, that is all yesterday, and there are many other behaviors that are not considered today, not polite, not courteous. Today's kids are not taught some of these behaviors. Today, many children treat the library as an outdoor play area. Today, many children are running in the library like a game of tag between tables on the book or the book cupboards. They are noisy when adults sit at computers or reading in the reading area. They run between the rows of chairs, and it's dangerous at times to back your chair up, to turn and stand up because a child is running behind you through the area. I have many times stopped a running child and told him or her, one, we use quiet voices in the library, and two, this is not a playground. We don't run inside. Just last week, a parent using a study room with one child had two boys running in the hall to the library area and back. Right or wrong, I followed the youngster to the room and told him that the carpet was not safe to run on. If he's tripped and fell, which could happen, he could get minimally a rug burn and worse, a head injury. We also have a township with a rising water table, and before long the existing library will experience foundation problems if it isn't already. For these reasons, I would like to see a new library building, one where the children's activities are in a completely separate room away from the adult activities. A room where their noise, and I call it noise at my age, I'm probably older than most of you in here, maybe one or two, doesn't conflict with the quiet adult activities, computer work, or reading. Even the kids' reading or computer area is out, separated by tables from the adult computer area. You really should come and look and see what we deal with as a patron. We need more space. We need more areas for different collections. And by the way, I volunteer and have for the past 4 years at the book sales. I'm told I can pack a box of books up on the extras we have left over faster than anybody. I'd also like to see a program where, and I don't know because I haven't checked with area schools, I know there is this program at the Salem South Lion where a therapy dog comes in and a child who is having problems reading sits down and reads to the dog because the dog doesn't care if you mispronounce a word, if you don't know a word. You don't do anything but monitor the child. If a child asks you for assistance, you give it, but otherwise you keep your mouth shut and let him read to the dog out loud. They practice, and it gives them a sense of accomplishment. It gives them a feeling of getting a good book read, and it's usually with a reading level that they can accomplish so they can be successful. But it helps them read on their own, whether they make a pronunciation mistake or not. It gets them comfortable with reading. These dogs, by the way, are certified therapy dogs. They're not just somebody saying, oh, my dog's a therapy dog, like you get on the airplanes with the ostrich and the peacock and whatever. These are certified. And unfortunately, I lost my dog in November of 18. So I miss him. But that's the reason I would like to see a new library.
Mrs. O'Brien, can you
Thank
just
you.
give your
I was just-
address? Mrs. O'Brien, could you just give your address for the record? I mean, we know who you are, but.
I was going to say, young lady, you were so fast, I couldn't even get your name and address.
Sandra O'Brien.
Address.
Your address.
Oh, I use a post box at the New Hudson post office.
Okay.
I got
Thank
library in the brain tonight.
Thank you.
Box 387.
Thank you.
Okay, before we move on, that was just kind of quick, so she was quick. I don't think that one person, and I could be wrong, I'm gonna speak for myself only, do not think that you are doing the most amazing job in our library that there ever was. And you know, I stood up for the library when I ran the last time. I stood up in front of everybody. I told them I was absolutely, and I still am. There's nobody in this place that's more willing to help the library get a new one. I think where we added a disconnect was, I think that the property, we were kind of taken back because since the library was turned down in whatever that was, 16, there's been several other people that's come in. One of them was the owner of the property that was part of the consent judgment. His name was Earl Lefebvre. And he was trying to put a memory care hospital on that piece of property. And he was moving right along, and unfortunately, I shouldn't say unfortunately, I do say unfortunately, he passed away just recently. And then that whole consent judgment has gone to a different entity right now. And we're not really sure who the new part of that entity is. So I think where the disconnect is that we need to be we need to be kept in the loop when you decided to put it on that property. It would have been nice to just come in and ask the board, because it is a brand-new board. I mean, there's quite a few new people here that weren't here at the time that it was offered up the last time. And as we know, when the library went down, it didn't get the agreement for the property. Nothing was written up, so it never really was thought that it continued. And they could still, but I just think we need to get together on this thing and figure out if the township has a use for it, and if the township doesn't have a use for it, it could be a perfectly great plan. But that's just me, and I would be open to listen to anyone else talk. I mean, that's where we're at. The property, I think, is just, I think we needed to be brought in. Yeah, and it isn't just for the library. It actually was a community center, a senior housing center, or any other public community building consistent with the judgment. I mean, it was several things municipality-based. So basically, I still think there's an opportunity, but I really think that we need to get together and talk through this thing. Maybe put a little committee together, try to figure out if it's the best use, if we have other uses. Our township has been growing, you're absolutely right. And we've been coming under situations where we could possibly have to build a new fire department. I don't know if that'd be the perfect place for it. A DPW yard, maybe a park. Our park that we've been promising to put on 11 Mile in Milford kind of fell apart. There could be a possibility of a park there. We don't know that. So I think, and I'm only talking for myself, it's only one. Again, I'm 100% behind the library. We just have to figure out if this is the piece for it, and I think that's logical. I mean, it's a township asset that is owned by the entire, maybe it's a perfect place. I just think we need to get together and talk about that, and I think there's time to do that. I really do. I mean, I'm not saying I'm against it, for no means. I'm saying we need to talk about it. And again, I'm going to open it up. Please, jump in. Anyone? Go ahead, anyone.
No, I think you did a pretty good job. I would add that, I mean, one of the things that John maybe didn't mention on potential needs is community and senior center. I mean, we had a presentation from our senior center that's now in the high school, and they're bursting at the seams. I mean, they have no room. And, perhaps in the discussion, which I think is a good idea, there's an opportunity to have a dual purpose facility, which, or some sort of a partnership. I'm just throwing an idea out there.
But I mean, there are things I'd love to talk about, to see if there's an opportunity. Maybe we work together and we get with the community and make good for everyone. Senior center possibly, a library. I don't know. I don't know. Anyone else? Lisa?
Well, John, I went back and I looked at our capital improvement plan and trying to find out what are the township needs really, and I had noticed that there were 3 or 4 different items where it came up with property acquisition, and so I would, I think the fire department was one, and the DDA for parking was another, and I mean, property acquisition has been on the, has been a concern since that capital improvement plan in 2017, and I guess I would defer more to you and Michelle and Patty as far as what are the needs for the township itself. Like, are we looking at property acquisition? I do remember you had mentioned the park. I think Tamara Ward and Jay Howie were here one day, and we were talking about the park, and they had mentioned, well, what about the property near Abbey Park? And that was before we knew that our current parcel was not going to really work out as we had hoped. So I guess I would just defer to having some analysis of what are our future expected needs for the township as a whole, and where do we see the use or the need for property?
And I think that's an opportunity to do that also. I mean, to find out if it's a need that we have. But
I don't know what you see in the future as to what it is that we may need. I mean, we're looking at the township hall expansion, and is there another department where we know within the next year or so that we are gonna need property? I don't know that, and I think that maybe a look at capital improvements or suggestions would probably be a pretty good first step.
Hey, John, as Steve said during the presentation, I was assisting with the site selection process back in 2015 before coming on the township board. And we had looked at, where the 11 Mile Park was, several other properties, even some to the west here, west of Township Hall here as well. And we did come to that conclusion. And at the time, we had talked to Chris Dusen, who had the consent judgment or the actual agreement that showed that it would be, and it did list off those, library or other civic use. I don't have a copy of it now, but I just remember that conversation with Chris. So that'd be something else that we should probably look at. And I guess in my general opinion, I don't really have an issue with sending or using that property for a library. It's pretty centrally located for what the use would be. And if it's donated, if we got it for free and donated it for free, I guess I really don't have an issue with it. If it's something that turns into a sale or the library has to acquire property somewhere else, then that just kind of gets rolled into the millage request, which then, we'll all end up paying for it anyways if it were to pass. So that's just kind of how
But I do think that that's part of the conversation. I think that if we could just sit down and talk about that, it may end up being that way. It may end up that, absolutely, this is the best use for that property, but I think we as a board have to take that opportunity to talk about it. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I mean, and it could involve several members from the 3 members of the board to sit down with maybe 3 members of this board, try to figure something out, make sure it's the right fit. And then we can come back to this board and either pitch it or tell them why we don't find that. But I don't think that would take a ton of time. I'm more or less looking at it as pretty quick. I mean, I don't want to drag the feet here, but I do think that we need to do, at least make sure that it's something that we will not need. Because here's the thing, if we end up needing it for something like a fire station or something, we would have to take the taxpayers' money and do the same thing you're talking about. We couldn't just put it on that property. We would have to go out and get the property, and that's the same thing you're talking about. So I just think we need to exhaust a few of them things that possibly could pop up. That's what I'm saying. And again, you may not agree with me. I mean, you guys got to talk. They're here to ask you about it, so.
I agree with you, John, and Amy and I were, and I can't see her face because of the computer that she didn't even want to use. Hold it down. But I had been concerned that we were talking about an August timeline, and through our email conversation, I came to find out that it's November, so I think there'd be a little bit of time for a discussion like that to happen without throwing everything, out the window.
Well, I don't think we should throw it out the window.
No, I'm saying if it were an August election, we'd be really jammed up for time, but that is not the case. It's November,
No,
which
it's
would allow
November.
for a discussion. Yeah. So, because again, I was thinking it was because last time it was an August question. I thought it was an August, wasn't it? In 16, it was an August question.
It was,
Yes.
and then it was recommended to us, actually by a couple of you, that we should go in November, because it'd be a general election, more people would be out to vote.
I agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
Thank you for not doing a special election.
No.
Yes, thank you.
4 elections is enough for Michelle in 1 year. But so yeah, I mean,
And I work the polls with her. So.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people here who work.
So I was just happy to know that we're talking about a November timeline, not an August timeline. That's going to be those months will be important if we're going to have a discussion, or have a committee that.
Would you agree with that? Maybe we can put a little committee together, a 3 and 3, and let's talk about it. I think that's a good starting place, and do it quickly. We don't have to wait.
Sure, no, that's fine.
You guys agree with that? We could do something like that? Who would want to be on, would anyone here want to be on that committee?
I want to talk about it for a little bit because I also am a big supporter of the library. You know that, Holly. I was so excited. I was so disappointed when the library did not go through. And we can't obligate a board that wasn't there then. And what is fair is you need to figure out, it's a township asset. And I'm the financial person here, and I know it's the township's asset. So really, we needed to come to this board to see what their thought process is. We can't just grant you the property without doing our own due diligence. And that's where I truly feel responsible for that, and that we have to do that first. I mean, we have obligations. Yes, we got the property. We got the property through a consent judgment, something that we didn't like. We didn't like the taste of it, but we did get that property. But it is supposed to be for the community. And I went to all 3 of those meetings. I spoke about millage rates. I was a big proponent of that. You know that. But I think we were a little bit blindsided by it was coming to this election. I just have to be honest with you. I didn't know that. And we've had no presentation. We've had nobody come here to talk to us until you came to see us like about 2 weeks ago. That's the last. I mean, we haven't had any, what is the dollar amount, what is the square footage, we haven't seen any of that. And it's not really in your minutes, because the minutes weren't even up to date on the website. So you gotta come talk, this is this governing body. If we're going to give, sell, grant, whatever it is, we have to be on the same page and we have to be together. It's a community. We can't just, I mean, we can't speak for the rest of these people. I can't, and John can't, Michelle can't. We have 4 trustees.
But I do think that's a good reason to maybe put a committee together, or maybe try to get to the bottom of something that works. I mean, possibly. I don't know, but
I mean, we have talked a lot about that property ourselves. A park, and we have the DPW. I mean, just us up here. You know, I don't think anybody's talking about the millage. We're certainly talking about the property. And I think there was a big disconnect, because I think I talked to Josh, right? And very smart guy over there. It's not about the library going for the millage. It's more about the property. And we're custodians of that property, and we have to make sure that we do the right thing. Look at our avenues, like we talked with Sean, and you know, maybe we would do a combined senior center with it. But we don't know that because we haven't been even given the opportunity to discuss it with you guys. And this is, Lisa wasn't on the board, and Chris wasn't on the board. Or, yeah, you were, you guys were. But we started talking about that way back in 2015, maybe even 2014. When we talked about the properties, and we went through every, you know, I helped too with the 9 sites. So, you know, you just gotta be on the same page.
So I think with Quinn Evans, we engaged them in January of this year to really formulate this plan to bring to you guys. Yeah, they finished it in January. I think some of what the board is saying as a group is that we have identified a community issue that needs to be met, a community need that we've heard from our patrons that they want. And so that's why we're bringing it to you guys as a community need. You know, it was brought up with the property that you guys need to look at it and decide what the community needs in the future. And we feel that this is one of those needs that needs to be met, and it all matches up.
I guess we want to be thought of too as one of those assets to the community.
I can't believe that anyone on this whole board would not think that. I mean, after that presentation, I mean, you guys are doing so many good things. I don't think that's an issue.
That's why we'd like, you know, always keep us in mind for all.
That's why we'd like to get something together and communicate a little bit and see where it goes. I mean, and I think I would, and you said you want to think about it, but I'd like to put a committee.
You know,
I see Carol.
yeah, I think it's a great idea to sit down and communicate and try to prioritize the needs. This is the first I'm seeing this consent judgment, and I have to do some further investigation because the township may not even have this property.
Oh. Well, that's a first.
Oh.
Well, good thing it didn't pass back in 2016.
Well, there,
It's a good thing, I guess.
there's a provision in this consent judgment that states that within 3 years of the entry of this consent, which would have been by February of 2007, the township would have had to complete a needs assessment study, secure financing for a project, and execute a executed agreement with the plaintiffs to build a building. And if not, it says, the right of the township to receive the parcel shall lapse.
Oh, well, that's even
So-
more
Sounds like a really
reason.
bad thing.
So I am going to have to further investigate this
Yeah.
and see what actually took
Wasn't it
place,
deeded
or
after
whether
that?
the owner somehow extended that to you, or something else, but I think right now, more has to be done before we talk about this specific site.
And I
Can
think,
we work on that?
to that, and we do need to look into it more, obviously.
Yeah, and like the supervisor said, Earl LaFave unfortunately passed away
Right.
recently, so I can try to contact his brother and see what information I can find out, but this is kind of up in the air right now, this property.
We were, on our side, we are under the assumption that it was deeded to the township
And
after that.
And that's what, I'm gonna
Sure,
have to
right,
check that, because
right.
that would be inconsistent with this language, but if that was done, that would void this language.
Correct.
So, there's 13 amendments to that. Yeah, so we're gonna have to do some checking on that. Yeah.
Well, this is a
So,
good
and
time to
these
check
should
it
all
out.
be, I should be able to pull these from the court.
I also just asked, I sent Catherine an email to get you what we have, because there is a deed as well.
Is there?
In addition
Okay.
to the amendments, so, but we can clear all that up.
Yeah, we need to clear it up, though.
Well, I guess, with Carol, with you chiming in, I don't know, if this property is deeded to the township, with the library board being a separate entity and decision-making, and the library having its own budget that is managed by them, and it's a township asset, like, can the township hand over an asset, and, Patty would probably have more information regarding the value of the property. Are we allowed to just hand over an asset to another entity that this township board or any future township board does not manage? And that's a question. I'm not trying to make a point. I'm actually
No,
just asking a
I
question.
understand
don't
exactly
know.
what you're
But
asking.
I have, when we were talking about this property back then, we were going to have some kind of an agreement with the library, not necessarily with just giving it to them, because we thought about it. What happens if something happens and the library can't contain their millage? What happens to the building? What happens to our property? We were going to have
There's
an
a
agreement
lot.
with that.
There wasn't an intergovernmental agreement
Right.
that was passed by township council as well as our council at the time.
Right.
That,
Do you have a
that
copy of
answered.
that?
Well, I certainly do,
No,
if you guys
that's-
don't have it anymore.
Do you have a copy of
Yeah,
that?
probably do.
Yeah, so I've got a lot of stuff I have to look at here.
Sure, and the
So-
whole thing about like whether the township would give a separate entity the property, we are not, I mean, we may be governed by our own board, but under the Public Act under which we're formed, we are governed by our own board, and right now we have our own operating millage. That wasn't how we used to exist. We were given money through the township board, but we are still a township department. We're just governed differently. But according to state law, we are part of the township. We are not a separate organization. We're
But I
just
think your
governed.
question is who guarantees the loan, right?
Well, I guess,
mean,
Yeah, we
if somebody
can't go out.
defaulted-
You guys have to, we can't, you
See,
guys have to bond.
That's what she's saying. Who's gonna be responsible if the millage went down, or not went down, but you had a 10-year millage or something, it didn't cover it, okay? Who would be responsible for the rest of it? I think that's what she's asking. And it would have to be the township general fund, I'm sure. Not to default on the bond, right?
Right, because even our departments here, there are enterprise funds. For example, the building department, we couldn't just take a bunch of money to buy a fire truck out of the building department. That would be inappropriate. It would be unlawful, I believe, actually. So I think, is
It
that
would
your
be.
point? Which is that you can't always have the mixing of
no,
funds. And
my point is that I don't have a point. My point is that I have a question.
I understand your question.
Yes. So, I'm not trying to,
Right.
make
No, I
a
understand.
dramatic point. My question is, I don't know the, so for instance, most of our township residents do attend South Lyon Community Schools. There is a small section that does not. So if I were to try to make a comparison, are we allowed to give property to the school district because they're a separate school district board, and so that was the closest comparison that
Yeah,
I
that's-
had. Is it the same thing? Is it
No,
different?
It's different.
Okay,
It is different.
so I just don't know what are
You're one of the few communities I know that have a library like this.
No, there's quite a few townships
Really?
under PA 164 statewide, absolutely.
Not the ones that I deal with though, so I.
Oh,
yeah,
no,
it's a
there are
different-
many.
Well, I think what we need to do is a little bit of homework here, and I think that we can put the people in the right places. We'll figure that out. Once we get that figured out from Carol,
Right.
we'll get in contact and we'll see where we go from there. How about that? I mean, and that's not shutting the door on anything. Believe me when I say that. It's keeping an open mind, like Josh. Remember you said open mind? Who has open minds here? Everybody, right? And we do keep them, but we have to do it in the right way. So let's do that. We'll go ahead and Carol will check all that out. We'll get in touch with you, Holly, and we'll see where we go from there. How about that? Does that sound fair? Are you okay with that? Okay. All right, well, thank you for a great presentation. It was
Thank you.
really informative.
Thank you.
I believe that original agreement at Mill River also said that Shoncheck had the right to build those
Yes.
properties.
They did.
Yeah,
That was part of it. yeah.
that's why I'm curious about that too,
Yeah.
because it would be them or whoever their successors are would have to build the building
All
under
right,
this.
Right.
let's move to our next item here. Consideration of Chubb Road paving contract award. And Leslie, you're going to take that over?
Yes.
Okay.
What action is the board going to take?
We
And
can't,
when?
we can't take any. We don't even know what the consent judgment, once we figure that out, we'll get in touch with Holly, and then we'll figure out if we're gonna get a committee formed. We have to find that out first.
I guess, or I'm,
Come on up, come on up and give your name and address, and let's keep everything on the up and up.
my name is Don Gerlin. I live in 54771 Greenleaf Circle East, South Lyon, in the Tanglewood development. I guess what I'm confused about, if the board had agreed to give us the property in 2016 to build on it, what's changed between now and 2016 other than there's a different board?
Well, the millage failed also. The millage
Well, sure.
failed, so I don't know how you can expect the board just to keep the property open for that build for the library, which it may be the place to put it, but you have to give us the opportunity to understand if there's anything else that the township
Yeah, I mean,
itself needs.
during those years, the townships continued to grow, which
Right.
results in additional needs that the township is required to provide. So I think all the board is saying, we've got to sit down, look at what do we need? You know, get a list of all the things we need and determine for this property, which would be the best use for it.
So is it my understanding that the board is going to have to form a committee that would
We're
work
gonna find that out.
with the
Once we
library?
yes.
Yeah.
And then bring this to a resolution?
I think that's the best way to do it. I mean, that's just me talking, but I think that we can get together, we can figure it out and.
Okay. Is there, I guess I'm just looking for a time frame.
Well, we'll find that out once Carol gets her stuff done, and then as soon as we understand
We really do
it.
have to figure out what's going on with Earl of Fave, too.
Right, and
That's a
that's the
huge-
tricky part,
That's the huge.
because we're gonna have to somehow deal with
I
his
mean,
estate.
no matter what, we have to figure that out. And he did just pass, maybe a month ago.
We do have a little bit of time
Yeah.
before you have to get the language done, so I think we can get that done.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? Thank you. Anyone else want to come up before we move on?
Sure.
Okay. Let's move on. Consideration of Chubb Road paving contract award. Leslie, you going to take that on?
Okay, thank you. Just referencing my letter dated February 27th in your packet, the Chubb Road paving design has been completed. It's been approved by the permitting agencies, and it was publicly bid through Mitten. Lyon Township subscribes to Mitten for publicly bidding projects, and the bid was opened last Tuesday. We only received one bid, which was submitted by England Civil LLC, in the amount of $1,463,876.48. We did have a correction of a $50 error in their bid. Approximately $203,000 of that is associated with the sidewalk construction that would connect Tanglewood and Lion Ridge, which includes a retaining wall, which would be necessary to construct that sidewalk. There's a significant wetland that is parallel to the proposed sidewalk, so it's necessary to construct. We did check England Civil's references. We actually heard from three references since the bid opening, and all of them were excellent. They would self-perform all of the work with the exception of the concrete curb, and their concrete curb subcontractor is GM and Sons, who did the work at Fire Station Number 2. The estimate that was dated September 24th, 2018 was in the amount of $965,657.93. That did not include the sidewalk connection at that time. So after receiving the bid, I did contact the Road Commission as well as a couple of the contractors that downloaded plans but did not bid, really to get their feedback on this, because when you publicly, for Lyon Township, this is a considerable project. And one of the things that I discussed with the Road Commission, and I talked to a road designer who bids out roads all over the county to get his feedback. You know, what do you think of this? In his opinion, that this was a relatively small project for road builders. For example, you know, everybody's probably aware of Dan's Excavating. They bid miles and miles of road. Toby Construction, they're massive road building contractors. This might not even be of interest to them. They might consider this too small, where they could take their staff and work for 3 miles all summer long. And that kind of made sense to me. And then on the other hand, the small contractors, I did contact one of them and I said, well, you know, I'm just curious why you didn't submit a bid. Would you give me feedback? And they said, well, they would normally be a subcontractor to a large earth mover, and no one contacted them. So the other thing that my construction side of my business mentioned to me is our weather last year was kind of wild. It rained all the way through June, and then we had a snowstorm in November. So a lot of the projects that we are involved with on construction side didn't finish. So they have that backlog of work coming into 2020. So I think you combine all of those things, and that contractors are in demand, and that's why we received one bid. So I also talked to the Road Commission during this conversation about their schedule for Curry, and what did they think about if the board wanted to rebid if those roads were constructed at the same time, because they're a mile apart. And even though they wouldn't be technically the detour routes, you would have parallel roads that would be shut down at the same time. So I am of the conclusion that to rebid, let's say tomorrow, I don't think you're gonna get any better prices if you received any more than one bid. I don't think you're gonna get better results to immediately rebid. So my recommendation would be, if you wanted to proceed with construction this year, that I would recommend the award go to England Civil in the amount per their bid. If you wanted to delay, you could bid at the same time that Curry Road is under construction, but there's no guarantee you get better prices. And
I just saw where Curry's been shoved out to 2021.
yes, they don't anticipate any paving until 2021. They'll probably start tree clearing later this fall. There's some major utility relocations that they have to do. So I wish I had better information for you, but this is really, from people I've talked to, what I would recommend. If you wanted to proceed with the construction, I would go with England Civil.
Okay, so basically we have one bid. Generally, we require 3. If you want to put this out again, I don't think that would be a problem, right?
No, you can bid it as many times as you want.
It's totally in a conversation. How quickly do you want to get this paved? Okay, so that's what we're gonna do.
I think it's been sitting on the books for quite some time, because the township received some monies for this years ago, $350,000, so, and every time this comes up, it gets more and more expensive. If we were to delay it a year, then it'd be under construction the same time as Curry.
Could be.
So I'd rather just get it done and.
Well, and in the budget, we did budget 1.9, so we do have
Right.
enough in the budget to do this, and then some.
I had the flashback to the rebid of the park. When we rebid it, it just came back a massive amount. Like, we all thought it was gonna be a smart idea to wait a little longer and rebid it, and it came back massively more. So if we have it budgeted for this, I'm of the opinion we should just do it, because it's probably gonna come back more if we wait.
I second that motion.
I know I made a motion, but all right.
Sound like it.
Okay, well,
Well, we didn't hear from Michelle or Patty, so.
yeah, I'd like for anyone to speak up, and then I'm gonna open it to the public to talk, because I know there's somebody here who would like to say something.
You'll keep us here too long, Sean.
So, anybody else have anything that they want to add?
No, because I'm all for it. I agree with Chris.
Okay.
And we promised the people there.
Yes, that's.
And that's what I don't, and we have $350,000 that goes towards it. So you can look at the 1.4, but it's really a lot less.
In theory, I agree with Leslie that it should be a better price next year. It makes sense to roll it onto one, but you know how that goes. And,
You don't know that.
the construction costs are not going to go down. And I figure that this is such a small project now. I mean, all these big road projects all over the place are, that's where all the material's going, and it's driving up the cost for everybody else. And, yeah. Kind of like same boat.
And we're paying for a little convenience of not shutting down 2-mile roads at the same time.
I agree with that too.
I think that would be
Huge mistake.
We can't control the timing of
We can,
Curry.
I mean, we could actually control this one. Usually we
could.
can't control it.
Right.
And it just,
I mean, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, hang on one second, I'm gonna call for, come on up. Any more questions, you know, I mean, if you wanna.
I
All
just
right.
do want to state one thing. I know Mrs. Lixie is in the audience.
I'm gonna give her an opportunity.
Okay,
No,
we
I-
do have one grading easement to obtain, so if there isn't, from her and her husband, so if there is a motion to award, I would recommend that you make it contingent on receiving that grading easement, and we'd hold off on contract documents with the contractor until that's executed. We have all other grading easements and all other permit approvals. Okay?
Okay.
About the wood one or the other one that's up in the air that I don't know anything about anymore?
Come up here.
Do you wanna come on up? Do you wanna talk about your
Come on up,
letter?
my name up.
Okay, Bob first.
I'm Bob Freund. I live in Mill River. Geez, my address.
Pull your phone out.
27933 Tremont. I'm curious. I don't know which side of Chubb Road is the sidewalk going to be on.
Well, it's going to be on the west side for just north of the Tanglewood entrance, and then there's a mid-block crossing that will go to the east side along Lion Ridge.
I'm not sure I understand that, but if I
It
hope you're
doesn't go
not
all the way
putting-
up to 10 Mile.
No, I get that.
Yeah.
That's not my concern. My concern has to do with, I couldn't figure that out, John. Sorry, but my concern is, are we putting a sidewalk alongside a number 8 fairway and exposing people walking or bicycling or playing or whatever to golf balls coming in? That's looking at the plan, I couldn't tell whether it's on the east side or the west side, but.
Do you want to look at this?
But I would hope it wouldn't be adjacent to a golf course fairway.
You wanna
It's
take a
not.
look at
It's
that?
by the homes in their wetland.
It crosses over.
Do you want me to explain this?
Where it crosses over.
Where's the pond?
Okay, so here's
How bad of a golfer you
this
are.
is Tanglewood Drive, the drive into Tanglewood.
I thought
Okay.
they were gonna move that.
This is the sidewalk. See where the residents
They
live?
talked about that.
And there's the, what?
They were gonna move that T-box
So is this?
inland a little bit.
West side. Then it crosses here.
I guess I need to,
I can-
where's the green and where's the
No,
fairway
I'm gonna have
relative to the sidewalk? Looks like, you may be crossing, you may be crossing.
Yeah, I want to. We got some things
You may have
we're
it
going
right,
to.
that it's not adjacent to the
Okay.
golf course.
Oh, it's fine.
All I wanted to know is whether it's next to the golf course.
I can explain it on here, thank you. So this is 10 Mile, okay, in Chubb Road. This is the entrance into Tanglewood, Hidden River. And so the sidewalk would be on the west side of the road, approximately here, this location. Then there's what we call a mid-block crossing, where you have a crossing without a stop sign, you know. Then it's traveling up the east side of the road here. So that's the area of the proposed sidewalk, it's just this section.
The golf balls do go there.
Couldn't you move it before you get to the green?
It's big. That's the problem.
The sidewalk?
Yeah, if you're going from here to here, why not go from here to here and then cross and get away from the golf course?
We can look at doing that. It might modify our,
I've always objected to the bicycle path, and just because of the danger that you're putting society in facing the golf balls, they're hitting from the north towards the south, so they'll be hitting right straight towards the
Okay,
sidewalk.
But
we can take that into consideration. But
yeah, we can talk about that off, I think, after the meeting. And it's not gonna change the costs significantly to move it to the other side.
The only thing I heard was that if you had to build this retaining wall, you wouldn't if it went on
You
the
would.
other side of the road.
There's wetlands on both sides.
Okay, yeah, but for sure that pond is quite a barrier, but anyway, okay.
Okay,
That's the only thing I was worried about.
okay. All right,
Thank you.
come on.
Chubb Road's 2 miles long. What part is going to be paved?
We can show you right there on them. How far is it gonna be paved down?
It's going to be paved about 2,000 feet south of 10 Mile to this entrance right
Just to
here.
there.
Yes,
Just to
and there
there.
will be a right turn lane on 10 Mile as well.
Bigger than what's there now.
Pardon?
Bigger than what's there now.
And paved.
It's already curved and paved,
Oh, on 10 Mile?
Yes.
Oh, it's gonna be widened.
hopefully.
Okay. Mrs. Lexley, you want to?
There's no intention to take it down to 9 Mile.
No.
No.
Because when that does get done, you've got to consider some off-street parking for the cemetery.
Okay, well, when we get there, we'll
Plug that
figure
into
it
your,
out. Okay, Mrs. Lexley, come on up.
Geraldine Lixie, 24141 Chubb Road, South Lyon. Obviously, the paving of Chubb Road has been a serious issue for a long time, and I'm not here to say anything that would argue that point or say don't consider an already open-priced bid. That's public information. But there are issues in this township regarding groundwater saturation. I have to stop and back up. I use all the wrong words. I'm very layman. And after hearing Artesian and the engineers and you guys, please bear with me. Just kind of, you'll figure it out. Okay. So a little history. I have lived there for over 15 years, and I have sent a letter to the, forwarded to the board for your information. I'm not going to go into the details of that letter, but quick, a little history. When Lion Ridge was built, they raised the road 2 feet. Never once coordinated with any of the residents. So some people may wonder why the little end of Chubb Road residents have been a little ticked about knowing what's happening with this road. And it kind of stems back from, we never know what's going on until it's done. Leslie's tried to keep us informed, but not necessarily to the degree that I guess I would say I loved. But anyway, they raised the road. And I am the one lot in this project that has probably given her more concern because my property slopes down and literally is 10 inches below the high point of the dirt road that they ended up putting there. And so there's been a lot of water, and CES has spent time dealing with that drainage issue. 2012 and in 2019 by letter, I talked to the board about my concerns with water, saturation, ground, whatever you want to call it. I had a little drawing showing where around the golf course, this pond, this natural Tanglewood Hole 8 golf course pond, has been used for retention. I've never seen any maintenance done on it for retention to see that the flow is right or that it's dealing with pollutants from the soon-to-be paved road. So I've always, look out my window. What else have I do? I'm retired. I see these problems and I try to let you know we need to be concerned. Leslie's staff's been concerned about the drainage regarding my driveway change. It's going to be significant. I guess that's what she's looking for me to sign, but I don't have it. I don't even have an answer to how high the driveway is going to be or what the slope is going to be. And I'm a little concerned about that because is the water now going to just come to my house where it used to go down there? All right, but that's not what I wanted to tell you about. I've talked to a lot of people in the township, and you've heard their complaints about the groundwater, the storm drainage, the retention pond problems. I don't think it's news to you. I believe this pond issue epitomizes an issue in our township. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to come here and make sure you don't lose sight that I've been told the pond retention issue is beyond the scope of this project. Okay, but it's not going away. And I listed the problems. Well, one of the problems, I'm not going to go into why I tell you it's there. I'm just kind of asking you to believe me. Cart paths crumbling, golf carts and my lawnmower sinking in the mushy water, walking where you are, whirlpools in the middle where I had landscaping. The pond has, since Tanglewood and Greenbrier, extended its little heart. You can do an aerial view and see from way back when it was just a pond and no golf course. You can see the changes over time. You can see the willow trees are now in the water or on the very edge. It can't expand anymore. And since I've noticed that, I've noticed the water, which was on my June 2019 letter, into my yard, up the hill, into my yard, around the big boy tees, the high tees, sorry, I call them big boy tees, but around the tees that prevent the pond from flooding. It doesn't flood, it won't flood, because it's graded around it. And so my questions have been, and it didn't fit the scope of the project, so I don't have answers, but they're in my letter to you, and someday I guess I'd like an answer. When Lion Ridge decided to direct the stormwater into hole number 8 pond, was there any agreement or notice or responsibility shared with Mr. Freund, the Freund Associates, about maintaining it? I guess the first question is, does a natural pond not get monitored like a retention pond would be? Because I haven't seen them doing any maintenance on it, and I'm not so sure it's working. In my comments with Leslie, where I believe the water's taking the path of least resistance my way, even if it's uphill. It's an underground water table change. So if he's never been told to do it, or what he was expected to do, or if it's not his responsibility, I'm going to tell you I doubt that the road commission's going to do it. So the question was, would township money do it? Because it's kind of like a public pond, people fish in it, and it's public use for the golf course. There's a lot of issues out there. This pond is kind of the epitome of retention pond problems in Lyon Township, in my opinion.
Okay.
Personally, it affects only my lot and maybe around his golf course right now. My concern is with regard to like arbors of Lyon. When I talked to those residents, some of them said, well, we never knew we should have been cleaning out the outlets or we should have been monitoring. So
Mrs. Lixie, can I just stop you for one second? The retention ponds and all that stuff, the road project that we're on point right now, is that going to impact that at all?
Well, do you mind if I show you on the map? Do you mind, Mrs.
No,
Lipsy, if
go
I
ahead.
point to your
Yeah,
property?
go, fine.
Okay. So, I'm sorry. Like, why isn't it?
No, you can
Okay.
actually do it.
Oh, I can? Okay. So this is Mr. and Mrs. Lixie's property, and the drainage splits right about their front door. So this travels south to,
Can you stand on the other side?
oh, I'm sorry.
You can look at this one.
One of the things, you can actually draw a survey.
Okay. So about this area, it flows to the south.
It's not
Except I'm
working.
not that good at this.
Yeah, no.
I'm gonna put the
Okay.
pen
Sort
back.
of by Rainey's driveway, it starts, okay, I was digging gutters for 4 years, but I got too old to do that. These people started digging gutters to steer the water, and I would steer it that way. It's High Point here.
Yes, that's the high point. So it travels to the south. So when the road's paved, the water is still going to end up in the same wetlands. There are 3 pretreatment structures that will help with the filtering of the quality of water as well as any floatables, so pop bottles, things like that will get collected before it goes into the wetland. So there are numerous, did I touch something?
It's gone. I didn't do it.
Sorry, okay. So let me see if I can get to zoom out.
Well, while you're getting it up, I have a question, Leslie, because as you just pointed out, the water flows down from that midpoint, but my neighbors have all noticed the water going towards 10 Mile from that midpoint, north? North. Is that water, now that you're putting in big drainage things that are under the road right now, all gonna be added? Surface road water going into Tanglewood 8 Pond?
Yes.
The whole
No,
way?
No, it's split. So there will be water, we're following the basic topography. The grades change when you design a road. You have to meet certain curves for sight distance and that type of thing. So that will change, but the overall direction of where the water is going now, it's gonna continue to go. The ponds in Tanglewood are actually connected by ditching and underground piping, and we did do a significant research on that. What we weren't gonna do is a groundwater analysis as far as like what direction the groundwater is moving. But we did research every single phase of Tanglewood and put that together in a memo, and I can resend that to you. I just checked that we do have that. So I don't think there will be any change as far as impact, except you will see the water get to those wetlands faster once it's paved, because you don't lose anything by infiltration once you pave.
What
So-
about the water comes off the pavement onto the gravel and goes on down the hill? The width of the road at the top of the hill is not wide enough anyway, as it is right now. It seems like it's got a ridge there. You have to, about 2 or 3 feet. The road is 2 or 3 feet below the level of the hill there. It was cut through, and it's never wide enough, number
Well,
one.
The width will meet the road commission's requirements, and at 10 Mile,
It's
it will
so
be 3
narrow.
lanes wide, because there will be a left turn lane. It's gonna be significantly wider.
But where is that water going to off the top of that hill?
The water is going to the same wetlands that it goes right now.
It's gonna go into the gutter, underground. It's gonna come out.
It goes onto the
You'll walk
curb.
gravel out there at some point though, is what I'm getting at.
What high point are you talking about?
Go further down.
You're talking about by 9 Mile.
No, further, between here, towards 9 Mile.
Excuse me.
Between, it's lower here, but if you're even.
They're gonna stop at that
Yeah,
point.
if you get up to there and the water is
Yeah.
gonna go this
Can you
way.
do it?
They're not gonna do it.
All right, we've got
But
to get to the,
I just
we've
wanna
got to get
ask
to
a
the point
question,
here.
'cause she pointed out then that the water's gone into the wetlands. Can you put my house back? My front yard and my side yard where my grandchildren can no longer play, where I can't let them drive the golf cart, and if his people take a shortcut from their routed path, their wheels sink and leave ruts, and water flies off the back of my lawnmower. It's a wetland?
Okay.
It wasn't a wetland when I bought the house in
The water
2004.
table is higher now.
Okay.
Believe you me, I
So,
know,
so
and Leslie
my
knows.
question to get this back in
The
control,
water table is higher.
is this road, is the road project going to change what's going on right now? Is there a way, or is there something that Mr. Freund would have to do to manage the pond that they're talking about, or what is there?
Well, the ponds, it would require some maintenance. That one, I don't think will, because it overflows into the piped system of the new phase of Tanglewood.
Okay.
It used to do a natural flow before Greenbrier was built, and that was cut off, and now there's some drainage pipe there.
That's
But
correct.
I'm only standing here saying that since Greenbrier was built and Lion Ridge was built, the water started encroaching. Not this winter, but over the years. When I first talked in 2012, okay?
I got you. I
to now.
understand what you're saying.
And so that's why I'm saying somebody ought to look at the pond.
But, yeah, but that, the part of the paving, we aren't gonna get that fixed
No,
right
that's why it's outside the
So-
scope, and I realize
Right.
that.
I know.
I wanted you to be aware of a potential.
I got you, and I appreciate that.
That's all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, so, okay, come on up.
Help you out. For whatever it's worth, it has been my plan to open. There is a ditch there. There's a big pipe. There must be a 36-inch stormwater drain going through Greenbrier, and it goes through the natural creek system and crosses Curry and becomes part of whatever that drain is. But there's a lot of cattails growing around that green, and so the vegetation and other materials have fallen in there, and that original mild drain has kind of plugged itself. I was going to take an excavator back there last fall and clean that out. Weather happened, and I never got it done. I'm absolutely willing to go and do that this spring and open that up so that it can get to the Greenbrier drain and get on moving down the street.
That should help. That should help a
And
lot.
I can lower, we should be able to lower the pond by a foot.
That would be
Yeah,
nice.
it's been a long time
Okay.
since it's been lowered
Well,
because of the
let's go ahead,
Uh,
well, let's
so
go ahead and
for
think
whatever
about it.
that's worth.
Thank you very much.
Actually, I came here because of the library, but and
Okay.
I had no idea this was going on. But for
Thank
whatever
you.
it's worth,
All right.
I'm planning on fixing the
Okay,
ditch.
all right, so let's go ahead and get moving on here. Somebody want to make the motion?
I thought we had a motion
I
and
think I
support.
did.
You did? I don't
Yeah.
think so. I didn't
Did
have
I?
a second.
Yeah, and John
I thought
seconded.
John said.
All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, let's move on. Discussion of possible action regarding the Ralph C. Wilson Maintenance Grant Application for the trail.
Sounds good.
Leslie, let's move it.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Well, I have this grant opportunity, Tina actually sent this grant opportunity over to Patty and I, and we've been working on researching this. This is a new program, which is very exciting. There are very few opportunities for grant funds for maintenance, and this will be the first year that they fund. The program does fund grants between $50,000 and $400,000, although they did tell me that likely the maximum grant would probably be $250,000 since it's the first year. And it's up to 50% of the cost of the project. We did take some pictures of the pathway, and we have an exhibit of what we would anticipate applying for if the board authorizes that. The construction cost would be approximately $483,000, and we would propose to pulverize it, which is basically crushing and shaping, and then adding new asphalt, and then doing, if there's some drainage improvements and that type of thing. But the reason why this is such a great opportunity is the only other fund I'm aware of is TAP funds, and you have to take the pathway and make it MDOT compliant, which is very expensive.
Well, I think this is a great thing.
Yeah, I'm excited, so.
We're excited.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Yep, sounds good.
So you need a motion for that, to do that?
Yeah, to apply, because we gotta match monies if we go.
Okay, I'll
Let's
make a
go ahead.
motion to apply for the Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Trails Maintenance Grant Application for the Huron Valley Trail as presented.
Support. I beat you.
No, thank
All
you.
those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Consideration to approve the Muni Code legal review. You gonna
Seems like
do
a really
this
good
one?
idea.
Yes.
I say it's a good thing.
And it seems relatively inexpensive.
Very
for what you're getting. I mean,
inexpensive.
it's a lot of
Very
time.
inexpensive.
Somebody make a motion?
Grant.
Yep.
Somebody make a motion for
I'll make a
that?
motion to approve the request for Muni Code legal review for an amount not to exceed $8,550.
Support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion to adjourn.
Support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye.